It's still spinning. There we go. Welcome to the Main Mind Live, episode 106, Communist Manifesto, Return of the Sophist. So, this is part of the ongoing series where we're breaking down parts of the Communist Manifesto. I think we're about halfway through it. It's only 20-something pages, but, the actual manifesto itself, we're not going through all the forward and all the other references that are actually in there, because it's something like, I don't know, the version I have is like several hundred pages, but there's only 20-ish pages that are the actual manifesto itself. But it's taking a little bit longer because every paragraph or so, there's a lot more information to break down, because the Communist Manifesto is supposed to be just kind of like this general overview, and every time he mentions something in a paragraph or in a paragraph or two, there's a whole lot of
taking one idea and trying to lead you to a completely different idea while still sounding like a third idea. Like, hey, here's the happy, euphoric end goal, and here's where you start. And yet, if you follow through the logic, you wind up somewhere else. So everything we read is just
and there's a whole lot of him trying to smuggle ideas in that would require something else to be true, but he never establishes that other foundation. So there's a lot of that where he starts off, well, this is true, and then, hey, by the way, I jumped to a conclusion that wait, in order for that conclusion to be reached, you're ignoring the support that would have to be true that you just kind of gloss over. So there's a lot of stuff that you need to go back, that we have been going back through and breaking down and being like, no, you got to a conclusion that you cannot get to from the premises that you mentioned, or your conclusion is contradicting the original premise you had. So there's a whole lot of that. But there are a couple of stories this week that I did want to talk about because they're just kind of funny and goofy. So the first of these, I'm going to play the full clip here of... I'm going to play a little bit of this clip and then play the full clip of the second version.
And by the way, I sit on the stand, and it get hot. I got hairy legs that turn turn.
Okay, so that's all I'm gonna play of that as the first cut. 10 seconds or so.
I don't know what you're going with that.
So this is, he was at an event. So this is from the event in June where he talked about corn pop but I don't know why this is just now making the rounds.
The same event? I thought this was something after. This
is the same event as the corn pop, and you can see Donald Trump Jr. is like, this is worse than corn pop, WTF.
Yes, it is.
So this is from the same clip of the corn pop story. He's at a facility that is being named in his honor, and it's a public pool. And he's talking about his time as a teenager growing up and being a lifeguard at a pool. So that's the setup to all of this. But what he goes on to talk about is like, what? It is a rambling, incoherent series of thoughts that just it gets creepier and creepier.
Or two, if it does make sense, it sounds horrible.
Yeah. So
good angle.
Even in the context of this, it's just he said this while so this was part of the presidential campaign. So it's not something completely abstract. This was part of his presidential campaign.
Yeah, I mean...
But this is something that you would think the news would have been all over. Instead, this is kind of buried and pushed to the side. And this is from June of this year. And bits and pieces are slowly leaking out. I don't know why this didn't make the rounds sooner, but they're making the rounds now.
I think it's because the people who are recording have been trying to bury most of what he said. And so it's just been slowly leaking out because mainstream media won't cover what he actually said.
Yeah.
I mean, that whole corn pop story it kind of blew up in his face because everyone's like, nope, that is definitely not a gangster name.
Yeah.
Or did you ever in your life fight someone named Corn Pop?
So
did not happen ever.
So somebody took the liberty of animating this section of his speech, and it is amazing. So
and
here's
by the way, I got hairy legs that turn turn blonde in the sun, and the kids used to come up and reach into the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They'd look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
What?
And by the way, you know, I got...
Just... So the animated adds a little bit of stuff that's not in the speech.
But okay.
What?
What is? Did he say roaches?
Yeah, there's a roach. The animator drew a roach in the background, but
why did he say roaches?
What does roaches?
I learned about roaches.
Okay, so there's a couple of possibilities. First, he's talking about the actual roach bug itself. I don't know what that has to do with being a lifeguard. Second, this is the most likely what he's talking about, is he's referring to roaches as a roach is a type of as a reference to pot, like a joint. Or
he smoked a doobie right before he did this entire docket.
The third thing people have suggested is a racial slur that he didn't know was a racial slur.
Calling somebody a roach?
That's
not unintentional ever.
Yeah. So those are the only three possibilities I've seen people throwing around, trying to like, what was he talking about there? He's talking about kids sitting on his lap, and he loves kids sitting on his lap and learning about roaches, and for some reason, kids playing with his leg hairs. What?
Yeah, nobody does it ever. I mean, not even like a dad playing in the pool with his kids. Yeah, they may grab onto your leg, but I'm not gonna sit there and let kids stroke leg hair. That's just the weirdest. What is that?
Well, there's the other thing is he's reminiscing about his time as a lifeguard.
Yeah, I mean,
why would those be the things he's thinking about?
He has no relation to any of these kids at all. So, he's some dude, no relation to these younger kids, but he dips his legs in the pool and the kids swim up and want to stroke his golden leg hairs or something.
Yeah, it's like, that's your memories of your time as a lifeguard? What?
That's what you remember is them playing with your leg hairs and bouncing on your lap.
Because coming up and sitting on the lifeguard's lap. What? Does that happen at a public pool?
What are you talking about?
I mean, I wasn't alive back then, but I've seen documentaries, I've seen films and stuff from that era, and I'm like, yeah, there's no depictions of, oh, hey, there's the lifeguard. Hey, let's all climb on the lifeguard. No.
Any kids sit on a stranger's lap, and it's when they go to the mall to sit on the Easter Bunny's lap or Santa Claus' lap.
Yeah.
That's it. You don't have to watch your kid bounce around playing with the lifeguard's leg here and sitting on his lap. That's not even like new age. Hey, just be careful of what could be out there. Like 50 years ago, even that was just kind of, no, don't do that.
Yeah. It's like
ever. Children do not sit on strange men's laps and bounce around when they're not your kids.
Yeah.
One thing, if you're a friend of the family, you're like not a trained uncle, but you're like an uncle. You're around enough. You're one of the friends of the family, and so you play around with the kids.
Yeah, just some random stranger who's just doing his job as a lifeguard.
Pool, and none of these kids have anything to do with you other than they swim at the pool.
And you're there to make sure they don't drown. That's
yeah. Why are you in there letting them feel your leg hairs instead of sitting up on your lifeguard perch, making sure no one's...
Yeah, that's the other thing is he's talking about putting his leg. I was like, well, when you're a lifeguard, you're up on that stand, so you can they're up on that elevated position, so they can see the entire pool.
Sometimes I have seen lifeguards come down and they're just trying to cool off and dip their legs in the pool.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, they come down, they sit in the pool or whatever, then they go back up on the stand.
Can I play with your leg hairs since you're down here? No. If anyone asked, I would say, get the hell out of here, kid. Go swim.
Yeah, so it's just the ramblings of an old man, and the animation of it makes it even,
I don't even want to speculate on that. I think he just said a word and wasn't thinking of anything coming out of his mouth. That's my hypothesis, is just learned about roaches? What the... I don't...
so the only reference that makes sense is talking about pot. The rest of the stuff, I mean, nobody thinks Biden is like an unintentional racist, and no one thinks he was talking about the actual bugs.
That
he
would be
hasn't added any clarification. It sounds like he was just talking about joints.
if he was an actual racist. Do you think he would have let black children swim up and hang
No.
around him while he was a lifeguard?
No,
If he
that's
considered them roaches, and I'll put that in quotes.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what he meant.
yeah.
It doesn't
No,
make
it doesn't. So based on the whole speech, he was talking about being a lifeguard at an inner city pool, where it was a mixed community, because he was talking about he grew up in a neighborhood where they didn't have any black people, and he said most of the people at the time, most of the blacks at the time didn't know any white people, and so he went over to he was a lifeguard at a public pool that had was mostly black children, so that was kind of his part of his speech. So
Yeah.
so the racial thing that some people have been insinuating doesn't make sense. The only thing that does make sense is he's making a reference to joint. I don't know why he's doing that at a public at the opening of a facility named after him, and then he's surrounded by kids in the original clip. So it's like, wait, what? Did you just talk about
Comparing
drugs?
this to other speeches, so this is part of the fifth Democratic debate. He started to say black people, and it cut himself off after the blah, and it came off as Blafricans. He said that, and I think he's thinking one thing, and something else comes out of his mouth, because I don't know what else learned about roaches. That has nothing to do with swimming. Has nothing to do with and I don't peg him as being it.
No, it's just completely a completely random thing that did not belong in what he was talking about.
I've never seen that in his history of him coming out.
Yeah,
just
but
racist. But
yeah, no. And if he's talking about drugs, like what seems the most likely thing, look at the original picture. Like he's surrounded by kids and parents, and he's like, yeah, and I learned about roaches. Kids are gonna be like, wait, what's a?
No, I don't even think he was talking about drugs. I think he was thinking one thing, and then he started to switch to another idea, and the words just combined. That's where he came up with Blafricans.
I guess.
Or Blafrican Americans is what he said.
Yeah.
I think he's just, his mind goes one way, and he's like, oh, no, let me say something else. And then he's already halfway said it before his mind realizes. So I don't know what he was trying to say.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was drug-related, because there was nothing else drug-related in the story, nor would a former VP running for president be talking about blunts or roaches. Anything drug-related, especially when he's talking about hanging around children.
Yeah, and at public school, and he's giving this speech in front of mostly children and
he's surrounded by children. So
it's like,
I'm thinking he just had a slip of the tongue, and it just formed into roaches, because that's a real word, and I don't know what he was even trying to say.
Yeah, the other thing is
his mouth is now starting to run way too fast for his mind to catch up.
Yeah, he does this a lot, where he's just got these long, run-on, rambling sentences where he doesn't complete a single thought and just keeps chaining ideas together and like, yeah, I think I'm done talking because I ran out of words. And it's like, but what you just said is the most idiotic thing I've ever heard.
After that,
at no point did you. Oh, what's that?
Because they actually poked fun of that, where Woody Harrelson was playing Biden, and so he brought up the Blafrican statement. He's like, I love all the races, the Blafricans, the Mexicaninos, the Chinesians, all of them. That was one of the funniest skits I've seen from SNL in years.
I'll have to check that out, because they have not been funny for a very long time.
Agreed. This one I think you would like.
Okay. So the other thing that was in the news this week does regard Biden. He was at another event on his No Malarkey. What? Okay. I guess that's something I need to talk about, because that's his campaign slogan. What?
Yeah, nobody even used that words when we were children. I mean, I've heard it. I know what it means. It's just nobody uses it.
It's like...
That is something our grandfather may use.
Yeah. He's gonna as anti fuddy duddy, and he's gonna get rid of all the balderdash and
and the hubbub.
Yeah.
That's enough of that hubbub. Malarkey. That is not common use at all. No one's.
And how other people were like, yeah, that's a good campaign slogan. What?
That should have been an instant just turn and say, Nobody talks like that, sir. That's not gonna catch on.
That's not gonna catch on, and and it doesn't actually it. It's not a good campaign slogan, even if you're like, oh, no. I mean, essentially it means no BS, but it's like, yeah, that's still not a good campaign slogan. What do you stand for? It's like, hey, we just don't have any BS. We don't have anything. We don't stand for anything. We just don't have any of that BS here. What?
Actually, just use BS, and even most churches and religious organizations can say, well, he just means BS and not say the word.
Yeah, he could have gone with that. But the other side of that is like
walking around saying, "Hey, what's up, cool cats?" And everyone stares at him like, "What the?"
Yeah, but it's like okay, so no BS, but what do you actually have to offer? I'm Joe Biden. That's all he's got.
Yeah, people know me. They know my name. My name is Biden, and I'm Joe, and you've seen me around.
And I go and I talk.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that was his. He had a bus, and he's got that plastered on the side. And it's like, how many people are on his campaign, and nobody thought that, okay, this is a poor marketing strategy. This is not something that's gonna catch on. This is not something we need to actually stand for something.
Maybe his campaign managers are all his age.
I guess, because I mean, I didn't like the "I'm with her," but at least okay, it's like it's something that does mean something to other people. No malarkey doesn't mean anything to anybody. It's like, oh, hey, we just need a presidential campaign with no malarkey. That's what we've been missing. No. Like, Trump had the Make America Great Again, and then he's got Keep America Great as his current slogan. Hillary had I'm with her. Okay, it means something. It's kind of narcissistic and doesn't really mean that she's for helping out the country. It means her campaign is all about her. It's kind of the wrong message from what I see, but I understand people would get behind her because they're like, oh yeah, first woman president. Who's rallying behind no malarkey? That's the presidential message I'd like to hear. That's a message I can get behind. Finally, a president who understands where I'm coming from. Tired of all this malarkey.
All been bamboozled.
Flim-flammed.
Don't believe he's all snake oil salesman.
Yeah, politics is too much hooey nowadays. Finally we got Joe Biden who's gonna get rid of that.
Hey, see? Just imagine someone like the 1920s flapper era, and that's when he's campaigning.
Yeah, like if he was campaigning back then, yeah, I think he might have a shot. If campaigning nowadays, no, not so much.
Yeah, for this 2020 campaign, that is literally 100 years ago, like an entire century. The 1920s, the flappers. Balderdash.
Yeah, so the other thing is that at one of these speeches he gave recently, his wife was kind of giving the introduction, and she's on stage and she's flailing her arms around, and she throws her arms back, and during one of her hand motions, Biden goes out and nibbles her finger, and it's just kind of like.
Oh, okay. I saw a picture of him,
and he looks like a turtle. It's kind of the.
Wait, why
I don't know. It's
smack him in the mouth, or he went out to liberate.
No. She's waving her hands around, making these broad gestures, and she keeps going in front of his face, and so he just leans forward and on her finger.
What?
She kind of laughed and was like, ha, and the audience kind of laughed, but everybody looking at it's like, that was kind of. What was that?
Why? Is that what was on your mind? A finger in your face.
So when they laughed, it was kind of like it sounded to me like a nervous laughter, but maybe that's my perspective. But it's kind of like that was weird. What was that about?
It's really weird.
Yeah, he's just a weird old dude. And
have you ever done that?
He's still the front runner.
Fingers have you had in your mouth? I don't even do that with my own fingers. What in the?
I don't know. He's just a weird dude, and he's the front runner. He's he's still the front runner. What? That's the most. Everybody's like, okay, that there's nothing like, ooh, that's terrible. You shouldn't, impeach him or whatever, get him out. That his campaign's over. It's like, no, he's a weird, creepy dude who is either corrupt or too stupid to realize that his family's corrupt.
I'm thinking it's the latter. I mean, just judging from the way he talks, he doesn't seem smart enough to be corrupt. He just
Yeah.
seems like a creepy dude that loses his train of thought easily and is easily distracted by what's in front of him. Like, this looks like a beautiful head of hair. Let me sniff it on public television. Let me rub this lady's shoulders right here in front of the nation. Why?
Yeah.
Why?
His campaign, as far as I can, like, it should have been dead in the water before it started. He's still the highest polling candidate on the Democrat side, which is they should be like in full on panic mode now because they're like, yeah, this is the best we got. This guy.
The only reason he's on there is because name recognition, and he was VP under Obama, and they're hoping that carries. Everybody else's names, some states are familiar. Yeah, people are familiar with Bernie Sanders, but now with this whole health issue and with he's always been a bit off the wall. I mean, just straight up socialist.
Yeah.
He's not going to appeal to the masses. And then you've got Warren, who probably would have been a decent front runner. And then she decided to do like full Bernie 2.0 and we just went slingshotted herself as far left as possible. And now everyone's like, nope, now she's just coming across as a weird old lady to be hip with the kids.
But she's got details for her.
Oh, I'm going to drink some beer on this Instagram Live.
Yeah, so she's the most cringy try-hard candidate. But what I think ultimately put the nail in the coffin of her campaign is that the one policy that she's come out with is her Medicaid for all or Medicare for all. I don't remember which one she's calling it, but talking about how she's going to finance that. She's going to finance that by taxing the net income of all the billionaires. And I'm like, I don't think she realizes what... Okay, all the billionaires do not make that money every year. That's how much they've made over a lifetime.
That's net worth, like total worth right now.
Yeah, so you tax them on their net worth. That's going to decrease their net worth, so next year there's going to be less to tax them on, and then it's going to decrease, and there's going to be less. So maybe you could get through a couple of years of financing, but it's going to eventually run out of money.
Right now, they tax on income, which that has always been questionable on whether that should have ever been enacted or not.
Yeah.
And you actually tax on income. But taxing someone's overall wealth constantly year after year with no compensation, that's illegal. That is non-constitutional. We actually have constitutional law that states government is not allowed to do that.
Yeah, because
take your money to fund what they want.
Yeah, so that would be double taxation. That would be taxing on increasing your current wealth because that's the income tax, and it'd be taxing on anything you have collected.
It's like the opposite of compound interest. Yeah. It's like negative compound. Let's go put all our money in the Cayman Islands or get it out of the U.S.
Yeah.
That's the fastest way to collapse the economy.
Yep.
Nobody wants their money here. If even just having it in a bank, you're going to get taxed.
Yeah. And that's exactly what collapsed Greece's economy. Because so they ran out of money and they're like, oh, we can just tax all of these people who have their wealth stashed in the banks or in these investments. And everybody who saw that coming were like, oh, we're out of here. Yoink. And then and there's nothing left to tax, and they just collapsed.
Yeah, I mean, there's Swiss bank accounts. There's the Cayman Islands. You can put your banks in other countries where they have a strict policy. They don't do that. And they're not going to let any other government interfere and take your money. That's exactly why those type of accounts pop up.
Yep.
Greedy government. So the income tax, not happy with it. But if everybody's paying and it is a portion and they can figure out how to make it fair, fine. It is what it is. It's already there. We're dealing with it. Just make it even and let's run off of that. But taxing money you have year after year, I mean, the more you save, the more you lose.
Yep. So either spend it all or move it someplace the U.S. can't touch it. Those are your two options.
It completely removes the option to save.
Yeah. Other little quick stories. Harris is out of the race, so that I'm saying.
Oh, really?
Yep.
About time, man.
She announced that this morning. I'm sighing kind of a big sigh of relief. She was still polling at like 1% and 2%, so she for a while there she was like 4th or 5th, and then Tulsi Gabbard kind of just beat her face in. And then Harris has been falling ever since, and then has been kind of stagnating at around 1 to 2%. So she finally pulled the plug.
What is her platform?
I don't know. Put people in jail.
I mean, that's what she's done in the past. But as far as current platform, all of the debates, she's just been ragging on others' policies and trying to come across as I'm the cool one, the hip one who understands that, get it, and I'll prove them wrong. But she doesn't have any platform of which to stand.
Her platform was kick Trump off of Twitter and put people in jail. A whole lot of things that were very authoritarian, at least in her rhetoric. So, based on all the candidates that were out there, she seemed the worst to me. So I was like, yeah, that's the one. Had she run a more successful campaign and not been had she not been herself, I guess.
And more moderate ideals.
She was the one that I thought would actually have a chance of going up against Trump, because all the people who were like, oh, we need our first female president, would be like, oh, we need our first female black president that's from whatever. All of those people would have rallied behind her regardless of her politics.
She ticks the intersectional boxes.
Yeah.
If she just moderates, the main Democrat Party could say, you know what, I'm fine with that.
And had she had a moderate Democrat policies, she would have had almost the entire Democratic Party behind her. And then all she would need to do is, turn a couple of those, the independents or, people that are on the fence, and she would have given Trump a run for his money. And had she won even by a small margin, she would have been an authoritarian dictator. I mean, not like Hitler style, but she would have implemented all kinds of things. She would have used the executive office to the full extent to crack down on her political rivals and get away. I think she would have run the country like it was her personal piggy bank.
Right. She would have played very dirty.
That's just my impression of her. So I was kind of like, yeah, that's the one. Like, I don't think Warren is actually, if Warren gets elected, she's not going to get too much done. She's going to be kind of hindered on all fronts by her own party and by the Republicans as well. Biden, kind of same thing.
But Warren was actually growing fairly strong, and then with her whole, I guess, taxation for Medicare for all, of which she stole for Bernie but made it worse.
Yeah.
So everyone's like, Bernie already had a plan, and I don't really like it, but at least this is better than yours. Yours doesn't make any sense. It sounds like a horrible plan, and anytime anybody asks you about it, you just come up with the same idea. No, costs will go down. We're just taxing the rich, and the rest of the costs will go down. I was like, no, that's not how that works.
So out of the remaining candidates, Bloomberg doesn't stand a chance. Steyer doesn't stand a chance. Yang doesn't stand a chance.
No.
Seems like it's going to be Buttigieg, Biden, and Bernie. Those are going to be the only three left at the end.
I think Warren's still in it, but if she becomes much less progressive and extreme and gets more towards a moderate platform. Yeah. Unfortunately, if she does that at this point, she's already come across as extreme and progressive. So now people are going to say, is she flip-flopping? Yeah. What is her platform? We don't know. Yeah. Is it all pandering? Is that what it's always been?
Yeah, that's what it's always been. But I don't think she's got a chance of actually climbing up anymore in polls. I think she's got as high as she's going to get.
Biden. Oh, man.
So I think Biden is not going to gain any points. It's just a matter if somebody else catches up to him. I think Bernie's is kind of stagnating as well. I think Buttigieg might be the only one that's going to move in position. So he's the only one with any kind of,
The thing with him, and I was listening to someone else's report, is he started off pretty moderate.
Yeah.
Was going up through the ranks, started getting some more people behind him, and then hopped on the same whole progressive bandwagon. Saw his ratings drop substantially, and then backtracked fast enough where it wasn't his permanent position.
Yeah.
He has made some statements, but I think he is a smarter candidate than most of them there. It's just he's not well known, and the only reason he's in this running is because he's a mayor. He got less votes to be a mayor than AOC did to be a representative of her district. I mean, he is a small fish.
Yeah.
At the moment, he's a nobody.
So
But
I think when it comes down to it, it's going to be Bernie versus Biden at the end.
Probably.
Yeah. Like that. That's going to sit in the. That's basically just swap out Clinton with Biden and as a rerun of 2016, and then both of them just get blown out of the water by Trump.
Oh yeah, I mean,
out of all the remaining candidates, I don't think any of them has a shot of winning the national election.
No.
So.
Not even close.
So that's what I think with Harris bowing out and running a very unsuccessful campaign, she was the only one I thought could have possibly given Trump a challenge in 2020. I would like to see Tulsi Gabbard going up against Trump. I don't think she would win, but I think she would get Trump to actually like, oh, this is a little bit. I've got to actually come back on policy and not just character assassinations.
Now, one question on this. I just had this thought. Whenever there is an incumbent or a former president and they're running for a second term, if their first term at least went pretty decent, they did have some things behind their name, they followed through on most of their platform, they have a much higher percentage of getting reelected in term because people figure, well, it's not going to get any worse, and at least we'll continue along the same lines rather than going with an unknown, right?
Yep. So that's what Trump's got going for him. He's got that.
Decided to put forward all their clowns because now's the time to weed out the nut jobs and then switch back to a moderate platform for 2024 and say, now we have some real candidates and there is no Trump.
Yeah.
Maybe they're just burning off the excess whatever and saying, well, let's let all these weirdos run because we have no chance this year.
Yep. So anybody who is thinking about running seriously is kind of like, this is not the year.
Out. This has been. I thought 2016 was a little bit of a clown show. With Trump going back and forth with Hillary and what talking about each other. Like, this is the weird politics. This election cycle so far, Trump's just going out and talk the way he normally has, but the DNC has shot themselves in the foot with every debate. It's just nonsense. Who is this group of people? That's not even the Democratic Party at all.
I don't know. Some of them represent good chunks of it.
Yeah, California, chunk of it. That's it.
All right. So that was all the stories. There was one last thing, but this is kind of just a little haha. The media got caught again. So one of the news outlets, I forget which one it was. I think it was Newsweek, reported, Trump spends Thanksgiving tweeting and golfing, and a couple other things. And then within the hour, he was in Afghanistan serving Thanksgiving food to the troops. And so then they're like, oh, whoops, I guess we were wrong about what he was going to spend his Thanksgiving doing. And so then they retracted that, and they changed the and other stuff to, also serves troops Thanksgiving dinner.
Was it that Wolf guy?
No, some lady, but she ended up getting fired, and the editor got reprimanded for allowing that to go through. Because it was kind of, they both got kind of smacked. Like, I can't believe Trump is not spending the holiday with his family and not doing that. He's going golfing, and he's just going to spend it tweeting. And it's like, no, he did
better than what you could do.
Yeah. I mean, granted, it wasn't on the itinerary because it was kind of a behind-the-scenes secret little operation of going and visiting the troops. I mean, as you would think, because you're like, hey, I'm going over to the country where we have troops stationed and where we might encounter hostile force. Don't want to telegraph that, so you just kind of do it.
But even that being said, as boisterous as Trump is, and how much he kind of like self-promote, he can hold himself back. Yeah, one for safety, but I think because in this instance, he just wanted to be a good president.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that could be a clear motive. I'm not here for the press. They're not going to report on this accurate anyway, so I'll just go do it.
Yep.
And so they made up a story and said this is probably what he's going to do on Thanksgiving. So as soon as Thanksgiving's here, We can push it out, and then when he's caught on the golf course, we were right. And then, yeah, they have this weird misunderstanding about Trump. And it's not like he's the only president to golf. In fact, I think a good majority of them do that. They do something on their free time.
Yeah, there's countless pictures of Obama on the golf course. Obama took like was it 2.5 months of vacation during a single year of his presidency, and most of that time is pictures of him on the golf course and him doing other stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's where that picture came out.
Yeah, and George Bush would go to his ranch, and there's pictures of him taking vacation. I mean, and they take like months out of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much vacation or time they're supposed to have, but
no, there's no set vacation. They can take as much vacation as they want. There's nothing that says they have to do anything. There's no mandate on how much time they have to spend in the office. They just like whatever, I need a break. And usually they take these breaks around the same time everybody else is, like holidays and stuff like that. But
still, even if that seems like excess, they have the weight of the entire country on their shoulders.
Yeah,
I can understand a president needing a break, just needing to get the stress out of their head so they can come back and clear. I'm fine with that. I don't care if any president needs to take a vacation.
Yeah.
But why bash one president and not another?
Yeah, that's the other thing.
It's out of a thing. I don't know. I think things will hopefully start to die down after this next election.
All right. And that's all I had. So I guess now we can get into the Communist Manifesto, which
okay.
I did not have pulled up.
Pull up the next section we're on. I gotta use the bathroom real quick. Too much water at lunch. I'll be right back.
There you are. Well, I forgot to pull this up. Should have had it up. Let's see. And then I gotta try to figure out where we were last. So I know we were in section 2, and we were about halfway through section 2, which is the longest of the 4 sections. That's part 3, so sorry, actually, I guess I should pull this up on the screen instead of Why is it not showing up as one of the options here?
Okay, sorry. I am back.
There it is. I guess uh-oh, dang it. That's not what I wanted.
Yeah, where did we leave off? Is this on the right page?
This one. Yeah. That's what I was just sorting through. And now that I've got my screen actually showing the manifesto. So I know we were talking about... Yeah, so I think this is where we left off. Where he was talking about the school and the family. Yeah, there it is. So that's, yeah, we don't, placing home education with the social, because that was like, he was saying, yeah.
Yeah, I remember we discussed that, and then we got to the point where they actually stated one of the main points is the abolition of property.
Yeah, but we were a little bit past that, where he was talking about he wants to replace the family with education. Like, yeah, so he's advocating for public schools, which were not the norm at the time.
Yeah, they were,
because he's advocating that children, instead of being raised by their parents, because he's talking about that would indoctrinate them with certain beliefs, but rather we should make basically the education of children be public, which is which was actually being argued against at the time, and a lot of people are saying, oh yeah, we should probably stop doing this whole public school thing. It's actually making our kids stupider. It is terrible. Yeah. And it's for what the reasons Marx is giving here for public education is exactly what we're seeing played out, and we're like, oh yeah, that was a bad idea. Why did we ever allow the Department of Education to be formed in the first place and basically indoctrinate children and act as pseudo parents? Basically, schools replace parents, and that's why all these kids are coming out with kind of the same ideology and the same viewpoints, and they're not getting education from their parents, and they're not being taught values from their parents. They're not being taught what was real and the real history and all that sort of thing. Everybody's getting the same propaganda image from whatever public schools are putting out. So that's exactly what Marx is saying. It's like, oh yeah, so since capitalism is this exploitation and parents teach their children and parents want what's best for their children, so we should abolish that and replace parents teaching their kids values and wanting what's best for their children. We should just have children be publicly owned and all raised in the school system, so that way parents don't have as much input or as much control over their children's future. And it's like that was kind of what he's advocating for here.
So I think the part of the last area we left off was with the education, and then the question was, but you will say we destroy the most hallowed of relations when we replace home education by social.
Yeah.
And your education, is that not also social and determined by social conditions under which you educate by the intervention, direct or indirect, of society by means of schools, etc.? The communists have not invented the intervention of society in education. They do but seek to alter the character of that intervention and to rescue education from the influence of the ruling class. So the interpretation I'm getting from that is he's saying you as a parent are still constantly educated by society. You learn skills as a banker, you learn skills as a tradesman, as a whatever. You passing that information on solely to your children gives them advantage other children wouldn't have, and therefore, since your children have an advantage, they will grow up to be the ones in power and subjugate those who do not have that advantage. This entire idea is to make everyone the same.
Yeah.
Where you cannot ever have an advantage in life.
Yeah.
But that removes all motivation to strive for anything better than what you've got, because if no matter how hard you work, you are not allowed an advantage, then what's the point?
Right,
I mean, in athletic competitions, that's more along the lines of capitalism. That's more along the lines of just you putting in what you've got, and if you put enough practice in, and if you've got natural talent, you can make a good living off of it. But if we make it to where it's even, then there is no point in sports competitions at all.
Yeah.
It would be more of a workout routine that everyone does daily. Everyone goes out and does Tai Chi and then does 100 push-ups and 100 sit-ups, but there is no competition because we can't have anyone excelling above another.
Yep, and that is the ultimate goal of this viewpoint, which that removes...
It only brings down... That's it.
Yeah, that removes a lot of incentive to do more than you're currently doing, which is what people have been arguing since these ideas have been out there, is right now we have people who are very wealthy, and what keeps them going, continuing to build their businesses is not for their own, because they've got more money than they could ever spend in a lifetime. But what you'll always hear them say is they're building a legacy for their children, because they're going to pass on what they currently have built up to their children, and their children can use that to build up a business and support it's for the extended family, it's for all of that. But on top of that, they also give money to charities and things along those lines. So it's like, yeah, I can't, it's too much for me. Like, there's no, even if I spent, like, so for Bill Gates at his level of income and his level of net worth, he could go out and he could spend $5 million a day, and by the time he dies, he'd still have billions left over. There's no way he could spend it all in a lifetime spending $5 million a day, and eventually you're gonna run out of things to buy. Like you're gonna, you're gonna.
That's why you see him and his wife out
Yeah.
there building programs, especially
Yeah.
for third world countries, donating millions of dollars to cancer research and towards vaccinations and just general well-being globally. I could not do that. I don't have those kind of funds.
Yeah, so they've got themselves taken care of, they've got their children taken care of, and now they're like, okay, what else can we do? We've got so much money, we can actually start putting this to other projects, let other people spend the money, let other people invest it in things that we think will be good for everybody. And it's like, that's what you see. Like, and the other thing was, recently Jeff Bezos gave, I think it was like $50 million away to charity and all that sort of thing, and people were all, like, well, when this was announced, there's people all over the comment section of his Twitter after this announcement saying, "Oh, I can't believe that. That's not enough. How dare you only give $50 million? You should be taxed more." And it's like,
if they went with any current DNC candidates' tax propositions, they would not get that $50 million from him.
Yeah.
It would take him about a decade, 2 decades, maybe 3 to get that fully out of him.
Yeah.
He freely offered it towards what he decided. I think this is what I want to provide some extra funds for. This is what I care about.
Yeah.
That, no problems with that. That's how it should work.
Yeah, but if the communists got their way, and Bill Gates couldn't pass on what he had built to his children or his extended family, and he couldn't give anything away to charity, and he couldn't do anything, he'd just been like, okay, I guess I'm just retiring. There's no reason for me to build anything else.
I have no reason to build things any higher because it will never go to me. It won't go to my children. It won't go towards the investments and the ideas that I want.
Yeah.
You're going to distribute it where you want.
And what if what you want is something that's going to be ultimately bad for us? Who knows? Or what if you're investing it in the wrong way? At least I've established that I know what I'm doing. Or at least for Bill Gates, I mean, coming from his perspective, he's kind of like, at least I've got a history of knowing what I'm doing, of being able to successfully do projects outside of just IT, like his charity work from the Gates Foundation has actually been doing fairly well. Like, they've actually been solving problems. They actually have track records like, yeah, this is how many cures for malaria we've provided. This is how many people we've prevented from contracting these diseases. This is how much of an impact we've had. So he can actually look at that and use those to talk about his foundations. Like, yeah, this is what we've got actual results from what our foundation is doing. Now, if it just went to the nebulous government or to the nebulous publicly owned stuff, nobody's keeping track of what his efforts are doing. It's kind of like, yeah, I'm working tirelessly day and night to, he's already set for life, but he's going to work tirelessly day and night to maybe do something and hope that it's going to a good cause, hope that it's helping, but he's got no way to track it. He's got no metrics. He's got
the area we left off of within the Communist Manifesto, which would be the education area, right?
Yeah.
But let's say even within a public school system,
mm-hmm.
most of us have grown up where, there are those handful of kids that just seem to be at the top of the class. They just excel. They get it. They learn. They, I was fortunate enough to be one of those kids.
Yeah, sleep through class, still get the highest grades. Yeah.
Yeah, I was able to read before I got into kindergarten. I could read some Dr. Seuss books and stuff. But that wasn't because I'm uber genius. Yeah, I'm smart enough. But our mother took the time to actually sit down and do flashcards and things pre-K that most parents do not do.
Mm-hmm.
That extra effort is what got me. I learned the alphabet. I learned the songs. I learned some basic words. Learned to read some very, your basic children's sentences from children's books. By the time I got to kindergarten, that was a massive advantage. So, if we were to do that type of competition, that means any parent has the opportunity to do the same thing. Get some flashcards, start teaching your 3-year-old the ABCs, let them learn the song, show flashcards of ABCs, upper and lowercase, right? When they get about 4, then start showing how those letters combine into words like cat and dog and house and mom and dad and whatever, and just quiz them on flashcards so they get the understanding of the sound. They learn it. At that age, a lot of kids are smarter than most parents give them credit for.
Yeah.
It's just when you don't teach them, don't expect them to learn.
Yeah. So when it comes to languages and words and reading, from what I understand, is the ages of 2 and 3 are kind of like the prime area where that should be taught to children.
That's where the
Because
foundations of communication start.
yeah, that's
Why
when
learn to start speaking.
yeah.
That is their primary language, what you just have taught them.
Yeah.
And it's a
So it's
time
it's while they're building language skills, reading and writing, that's when it should be, and also all multiple languages, like
Correct.
children from multilingual lingual households, they're picking up both languages, and it's much easier for them to do it at the age when they're first learning language in general, than it is to wait. Like what we do in the U.S., where like, oh, hey, let's teach a second language in high school. What?
Correct. Yeah, a lot of countries actually do that. In the younger courses, they teach a second language
Yeah.
because the primary is already learned just through society, through interaction with siblings, mother, father, teacher, whoever, general society. So they teach them a second language because their brain is at that time already geared towards how do I communicate my thoughts.
Yeah.
That is one of the primary brain functions or primary building blocks of which you progress forward is during those younger ages is your communication skills. You are learning how to communicate because now you have your thoughts, you have your dreams, you have your memories, you have what it is, but you got so many questions because you can't explain what's going on around you. You just learn to communicate. So you can communicate with multiple languages at a younger age. So that being said, if we were to take, say, this socialist / communist aspect, it is saying you are not allowed to excel. If you get to our set level of education, we're going to take your grades, take everything extra you've been able to do off the top, and apply that to the lowest, and just say, well, we understand you did extra credit activity and extra homework. We're going to take that from you and give that to this kid at the bottom. That way everybody passes the class, everybody fits in. Why would you do any of the extra work? Why would you do any of the extra credit? Why would you excel at all when it is being stolen from you? It is being taken by to someone else who either could not, that's one potential, most likely did not.
And here's one of the things that it's occurred to me, but I haven't heard anybody else discussing this when talking about communism or and Marx in general. So the people who do extra without reward tend to be religious types. That's because most people who are religious and Christians in general, they say, oh, it's not about rewards on this earth, I'm storing up treasures in heaven. And so those are the people who will go above and beyond without a reward in the here and now. And yet, Marx was anti-religion. He called religion the opiate of the masses. And it's like, under his system...
They still have aspirations elsewhere. They're still expecting to sell somewhere else.
But yeah, so as you just alluded, it's like, well, if you've leveled off the playing field and there is no incentive to do more than is required, the natural tendency for people without some external motivation is to do the bare minimum to not get fired or not get kicked out of class or what. The bare minimum to pass.
Yeah, the bare minimum to be included in this blanket group that you're in.
Yeah, if there is no reward or incentive to be number one, they're just like, well, if I get the same grade, if I pass the class by getting a D, and they pass the class by getting an A+, why am I going to spend the extra time studying? All I have to do is study enough to get a D and not an F.
Yeah.
That's, and what they can do with that is they can, that's less time I have to spend studying, that's more time I can spend watching TV or playing with friends. Meanwhile, the A+ student is like, this question I don't understand. Okay, this is a concept I don't quite get. I could pass the test, but this is something I need to learn, not just for school, but maybe this will come in handy later on in life. And so those are the people who spend the extra time outside of school going through the books. It's like, okay, this doesn't quite make sense. Oh, when did that occur? Okay, that occurred before this. Like, yeah, so those are the kids who are trying to answer. Those are also the kids who are asking questions during class that sometimes a teacher can't even answer. Like, oh, yeah, I never thought about that. Yeah, that's something we'll have to look into. There is no real reward in the classroom, maybe, but they're gonna get the A+ on the test, and yeah, that helps them with their parents and stuff. But they're like, they use. I mean, I shouldn't say they, because I'm a part of that group, and because it's stuff that I remember doing. It's like, yeah, you got the highest grade, and you're like, okay, how do I use this outside of school? And you start coming up with ways to do that. And you're like, ooh. So,
but okay, let me offer a slightly different perspective. Not necessarily just religion, but there are those of inquisitive mind. It is within them.
Yeah, but these.
Especially so, I mean, even in my current job.
Yeah.
I can go outside on a break, and someone in network security starts talking about, oh, man, I got these tickets, and such is happening. And instantly my brain starts trying to figure out a solution. I don't even do network security.
Yeah.
I can't help it. There's times where I have to just shut my mouth because I'm probably going to say something that's not up to par with the network security team, but my brain it kicks into gear and tries to figure solutions. If there's a problem, I cannot help it. My brain will instantly go into, how do we fix this problem? This is where I come off as in like personal, just personal relationships, rather than sitting there and being a shoulder you can cry on. I'm the guy who came up and is like, well, this and this is happening. I would be the guy that's like, well, try this and this, instead of just saying, I feel you, let it out. I'm not that kind of guy, the guy that's thinking of solutions. And there are a lot of people like that, but they can't help it. It's not necessarily just religious. It is, if you ask them a question, they are curious as to what the answer is. When you tell them a scenario, they're curious as to what built that scenario.
And part of that is because there is reward for that, for solving something. Hey, somebody brings you a problem, you solve it. There is that physiological dopamine hit that your brain gets. That's like, oh, this is an activity I need to keep doing. But the problem is with what Marx is proposing here, what he didn't consider or possibly didn't know at the time, is that positive feedback that comes with solving problems is undermined by communism. So they've done studies on this when it comes to people's psychological reactions. If you get, like, if that's your job, if that is a requirement of you, like, hey, here's a problem, solve it, that's part of the same reaction, the dopamine hit, isn't, your body doesn't produce it, because it's like, hey, that's just what's expected of you. And what you'll see with people who are just like, oh, yep, keep doing that, just without that, like, oh, hey, thanks, man, you're a lifesaver, or, without reactions along those lines, or, oh, yeah, you totally helped me with this problem, thanks, I'll come to you if I need help in the future. That's what we get right now in our current society. But when they've done experiments and they've, monitoring brain activity and physiological reactions, when somebody's just like, oh, yeah, that's just what expected of you, they stop doing that at the same rate. You will see a degradation in their problem solving. So, like, somebody brings them a problem,
has no reason to process it.
Yeah, somebody brings them a problem. Their inquisitive mind is like, okay, there's a problem, I need to solve it. Solves the problem, and they don't get that, hey, thanks, man. It's like, oh, yep. By the way, yep, doing your job. Keep up the work or whatever. If they get a moderate praise on it, they may still continue to do the activity, but they've tracked over time that as they get the, just bland responses or just, something, their ability to problem solve degrades the more that occurs.
Yeah.
So what would happen under communism is, because there is no financial reward, there is no social reward. Everybody's just kind of like, oh, just do your job and just kind of be a cog in the machine. The more they're treated like a machine, the more they will act like a machine. That's kind of the conclusion that have been drawn from these studies. Is like, yeah, the more they're treated like replaceable cogs, the more they become replaceable cogs. It's like it siphons, or it reduces our ability to be uniquely human, because that's kind of what you're talking about is like this. Some people are naturally inquisitive, but if everybody is treated the same regardless of their natural tendencies, they all tend to conform into the lowest common denominator. Yeah.
I mean, okay. A perfect example of that are the children who hate doing their homework. When they do their homework, they get 100%. So I was kind of in this group. Nate was in this group in certain areas. I think you were in that. My son somewhat in that area. It's the regular classwork has become a bit mundane.
Yeah.
Right? If they spend an entire week on how to do this mathematical equation, you're like, I got it on day one. Now you're boring me.
Yeah. That's why I slept during class. It's
extra work. They put you in an accelerated program to put you to say, okay, I understand you're only in 9th grade. Try some calculus. Let's sprinkle that on and see how you do. It's because your brain needs to grow and to be inventive and to grasp at things. It needs to have higher challenges of which to reach. When you're told there's nothing beyond this, you sit here with everybody else.
Yeah.
It stifles motivation, drive. And in some points actually makes you less productive than everybody else, because they may be fine doing repetitive tasks. You can't actually pull yourself to do the repetitive tasks because it is just such a negative impact. I mean, that's the thing I had with homework. If I did this question 5 times, and now, now I got this theorem, I understand how this works. I don't want to do it another 50 times. By the time I get to 50, I hate it.
Yep.
I get the concept. I mean, I haven't done high school algebra or, fractions or whatever my daughter gets into, but I can still sit down even like 20 years later, and after about 5 minutes of looking at it, I'm like, okay, I remember, I got it. It's because it's in there somewhere.
Yeah.
I learned it. I got the basic concept, and that's all you need is the concept.
Yeah, that's the thing. The other thing with while we're on the subject of schools, what I've seen and what I've heard from other people with schools have a very difficult time of teaching concepts, and mostly they teach answers. That's the problem. Is a lot of the time schools are based on giving you the answers and seeing if you can remember the answers, not so much giving you the tools to think through answers, which is why that's what a lot of school is set up around memorization.
Yes, like the multiplication tables. I had to go through that in whatever 2nd grade or something. Yeah. So it's there. However, the opposition thinking is similar to what you're stating. Let's build core concepts. And so they built core curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
However, having watched my daughter go through that, hell no. They have dumbed it down so far, they have to draw. Well, I mean, not this year, she's getting closer to high school, but in 6th grade. So do you remember having those little blocks, and this is the ones group, this is the tens group, this is a hundreds group?
I'm not sure what you mean by little blocks, but you mean the counting blocks, right?
Yeah, the counting block. Yeah, a lot of classrooms had those, and that was when you're starting to get into multiplication, because they wanted to say, hey, if you've got 2 stacks of 10, and over here you've got 3 stacks of 10, how much do you have?
Yeah.
Let's multiply it. Counting blocks. Now they have to draw that on paper, and they have to list. It is simply counting one by one to do multiplication, and that defeats the purpose of multiplication.
Yeah.
It's core curriculum. And so I understand why there are shortcuts like the times table.
Yeah.
If I get the basic concept of 5 times 5, plus I can remember a shortcut of 5 times 5 to just snap a number in my head even faster than I can just calculate it, I'll take both. Core curriculum disregards any sort of shorthand or faster way of thinking. It says one by one, individual block, take it the slowest and most accurate route always. No shortcuts, period. It got to the point where my daughter was crying sometimes with her homework, and I'm sitting there scratching my head like, I could tell you the answer right now. I could look at that problem and solve it in 3 seconds. I don't know how to write to show the work, because this work doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
I now have to learn like a whole new career, and it's just a simple problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
And
bad.
mathematics should be all about, if you can find an easier way to get the solution, use the
That's
easier
called
way. That's what the quadratic equation is.
That's
Because
what an algorithm is.
yeah.
It is a simplistic solution to get to a more complex answer.
Yeah.
The
So
fastest and most efficient way to get to what you need.
yeah. So the quadratic equation, you can memorize the quadratic equation, and you know when you've got a what's that called? It's not a factorial, right? No, what's that? The parabola. It's it's something ace. So it's
Foil?
no,
Like
not first inter. It's what the product of foil. What is that called?
Hyperbole?
No, not hyperbola.
Not hyperbola.
Parabola.
Parabola. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Yeah, you can solve that. You can take this long drawn out process to solve that, or you can plug that into the quadratic equation and you get the same answer. It's much easier to go, or much faster to go through the quadratic equation. So they show you how they arrived at the quadratic equation, and then they're just like, yeah, just start using quadratic equation from now on because you know it's a faster way. But it sounds like this Common Core curriculum is kind of like we're going to teach you the quadratic equation first, and then we're going to go the opposite way, and we're going to teach you the long drawn out process, and you have to use the long drawn out process from now on. It's like, no.
Okay, so I have a better way to represent this to you. You have a programming background.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of dabble in the programming realm. So imagine if you were to go write some code for a certain project.
Yeah.
And you were told never use libraries. Everything's your core engine. That's your curriculum.
Yeah, okay. So
if you say solve physics, you're not allowed to use formulas. You must figure that physics out every time. That's core curriculum.
Oh, dude, that's ridiculous.
Where you only need the concept of what you did at the beginning. Let's sum it up and make it easier. That's why modular programming became a thing. It's because why keep reinventing the wheel for every single person ever in history? No. Let's let one guy invent the wheel. You look at it and say, I get what the wheel's doing, and then build along with the wheel to make something better.
Yeah.
So core curriculum just says, nope, everybody will keep creating their own wheel. That's the concept behind it. Man. No modules in programming. You build your library every time.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah. That's why, she ended up crying sometimes with homework, and I'm sitting there scratching my head like, why? This is not. I don't need to draw blocks out to show 2 times 10 is equal to the same thing as,
Well, that's Mark's getting what he kind of wanted, or at least to the most part, and that's why we're starting to see more and more people in high school and college embracing this socialism, is because they're indoctrinated in these schools where they're all kind of taught these things, and they're taught more memorization as opposed to
one aspect I can see that is inviting is that it's easier. When you don't have to think for yourself, you don't have to invent, you don't have to create, you don't have to design, you don't have struggles, you just simply do what you're told, and you just become your automaton robot or cog in the wheel. Life is easier. Things are just paid, you don't have to pay anything, there's no debt. Hey, I don't have to be anything. It is the easy route.
So something you just said triggered something, and maybe after we're done analyzing the Communist Manifesto, we should go through civil disobedience and kind of walk through some of this. Man, that is a short essay. I think it's only like maybe 2, maybe 3 pages. But that guy was Henry David Thoreau?
Yeah.
Wow. The insight that man had was amazing, and I can't believe that he was... all of the things that he was fearing from the government and all that sort of stuff, like to see it play out in real life. And it's like maybe this has been something that people have been struggling for years, but yeah, it's all encapsulated in that short essay. So it was what you said about automaton. because he mentions men being treated like wooden automatons in that, and that predates this, if I'm not mistaken, because that was
yeah. That's
early 1800s. This is mid 1800s.
this is into late 1800s.
Yeah.
But yeah, this during the drafting of the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
This is why during that Enlightenment period, Thomas Edison he was part of that Enlightenment Pact, but why there were all these other members discussing constantly on how do we balance this, because this was known to them hundreds of years ago that this is the way people operate. There are those who like to excel, there are those who enjoy the challenge, and there are those who, if we set this standard, will never rise above it.
Mm-hmm.
This is why they said government can't regulate this part of your life and should never. It's because what if people get in power that state we need it this blanket equal level? And then it destroys incentive, it destroys drive, it destroys, your push to do something better when you are not actually allowed to do better. So none of this is a new concept. It is simply the difference of people saying we can either have disorder and yet we can have growth, we can have invention, we can have technology, we can have an increase in various areas within society, or we can have total order of which nothing changes ever.
Yeah.
Which basically becomes enslavement. There is no freedom in total order.
All right. So I think we've hammered the education portion, and I've had the next section up on the screen. So starting on page 25 in my version. I don't remember if we had the same page numbers, but
no, not yeah. This is some.
So,
critical.
So it's right at two paragraphs after the one that you were reading from, whereas but you say we destroy, yeah. So. The next section I've got highlighted here is when he says the bourgeoisie sees his wife as a mere instrument of production. Wow. That okay.
That's a broad assumption. I mean, that's
yes.
I can see some guys thinking that, but no.
Yeah.
That's not even Christian. So in most Christian societies, that doesn't work at all.
And even at the time this was written, it's kind of like, no. Nope, that's not. I don't know where he's getting this claim from. He offers nothing to support this assertion. He just asserts it and starts building on it. And I guess you just have to take his word that that's how bourgeoisie see women. Even though historically that's not true, because if they saw women as the mere means of production, basically seeing them as a tool. If a woman has already given birth to children, why not sign her up for the war? Put a gun or a sword and a shield in her hand. Put her on the front lines, because hey, you're the bourgeoisie. You don't want to be the general out there risking your life. Hey, there's this woman that all you see is the instrument of production. She's outlived her usefulness as producing. Put her on the front line. Why not? That would be the mentality if Marx was correct. And yet we see the opposite. We see young men, and also it's sometimes the bourgeoisie kind of being politicians staying in the back and not fighting the wars themselves, but other times throughout history we see them at the front lines being the kings leading the armies into battle, and it's like
what this almost sounds like. This is not the first topic or the time he's brought a concept up like this. He keeps just introducing additional layers, just stating, well, it's all about production, and it's all about production and how you can manipulate, require more production, and how you can be part of said production. Yes, there are people who think, how can I maximize profit? I'm thinking his mindset, his general line of thought was within those type of people. He's kind of beating back his own demons.
Yeah.
You can only think of things logically and how they produce, and otherwise they're obsolete and useless. But he wanted to feel that he could empathize with anybody who didn't fit in that category. to me, his line of thought is just, he is kind of one of those extremists that is only dealing with production, which doesn't seem to fit most people. He has come up with like the uber, I don't even know what you would call that.
But
Uber entrepreneur, the guy who cares about no one and has no relations to anyone. It is all about
okay,
maximum
so
or gain, and that's his mentality. And he's fighting against his mentality because these aren't normal thought progressions.
so it sounds as if he's read a Christmas Carol one too many times, and he thinks all people who own businesses are Ebenezer Scrooge. Because that's what he just kind of described. Is okay. That was Ebenezer Scrooge prior to being visited by ghosts.
I think he actually thinks like Ebenezer Scrooge. Like that's the way his mind works.
Yeah.
I think he would be an Ebenezer Scrooge had that story not ended, and he said, "Well, I guess there are other alternatives. So how can I empathize?" I think his mind actually clicks the way that an Ebenezer Scrooge would. And that's why you hear all these weird statements like, most men don't think of their wives. I understand he said the bourgeoisie, but I would think even in the upper esteem of society, they don't view their wives as sort of production machine or mechanism.
No, I mean there are still people nowadays who treat their wife like trophy wives, sort of thing, right? That's the mentality. Is like, hey, you got a really hot wife, and you use her. She's got kids, and you're married to her, but you're not really a part of her life. She's got her own thing, her own socialite stuff, and she goes off and maybe she's going out and sleeping with other dudes, and you don't care because she's just there for people like that exist.
Yes, they do.
That is a tiny portion of the overall population, even amongst the wealthy people.
Yeah, most people either really appreciate their wives or aren't sure why they got married in the first place. But their main concern isn't how do I get more production.
Yeah, how do I, it's not just a status symbol or a symbol like, oh, she's just there to give me kids, don't care what else she does with their life. No, most people are genuinely in love with the person they married. That's the case for at least not 80 to 90% of the population. He's focusing on this 10%. It's like, oh, that's all the bourgeoisie. And I'm like,
that's why I'm thinking
nope.
His mindset is of those type of guys.
Yeah.
As in, his only mindset was, this is the way I think. And if this is the way I think, I'm going to assume most people in my position of loftier esteem think the same way. And therefore, how do we combat it? I think the Communist Manifesto is more of him battling his natural tendencies or the way he thinks. It is like an opposition to, because he understands those guys are assholes. Those guys are not good for society. Men who think like that aren't good. So he tried to build a plan against it, and yet he went like 180 degrees, complete opposite of a douche. That's not a solution either, because I don't know. It just
so this is what I that phrase I keep saying. Two wrongs don't make a right; they make a leftist. That's what he's kind of doing here. It's like he identifies something that is a problem. It's not a problem for all the bourgeoisie, as he tends to claim. It's a problem for a small percentage. It's always been a small percentage of the population that has kind of been like that. But it's also a small percentage within what he would call the bourgeoisie. And he's saying that's wrong. What they're doing is wrong. And I agree that, yes, what he's describing right there is a wrong thing to do. His solution, equally wrong. He's saying, oh, that's wrong. Let's make another wrong. Nope, two wrongs don't make a right.
So this is the same mentality of what you hear with, say, an abortion discussion, right? Whenever you bring that topic up and people say, and you're like, I just don't agree with abortions. I think that is a human life. That human life has viability, and it's not just a woman's choice of her body. That's somebody else's body. And they're like, well, what about abortions and rape? And you're like, you brought up the 2%.
Yeah.
You brought up the extreme circumstance. That's different. Let's discuss how to handle extreme circumstances. Let's get a playbook, and it's probably going to be on an individual one-by-one basis. Let's get a committee to say, hey, is this valid? Or, yeah, we get it. Or at least have some counseling for a woman who's gone through that and say, we don't want you to kill the kid, but we understand why you can't cope. I completely agree with that. But the other 98%, it's just normal thought process. He seems to be dealing with the extreme.
Yeah.
He has this view of like a snidely whiplash business owner twisting his mustache while people are sticking their hands in chicken machines, getting their fingers grounded off, and he's like, profits, that's more meat. That's not a thing. Nobody does that. At no point does any plant want their employees getting hurt, because that's actually loss of production.
Yeah.
That's why people invest into safety precautions. It's much easier to invest a couple $100 and say, well, let's get some safety guards on these machines. Please stop putting your fingers in it. Now we get more production and you don't get hurt. It's kind of win.
Yeah, it's that old adage, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And business owners found this out. It's like, oh, we had all these lax safety standards, and we realized every time somebody got injured, we had to stop production, we had to do all this sort of thing. And even though it may have been a temporary increase, like you said, extra meat, it may have been a temporary gain, but overall it was a loss. We'd be much better off if we had a way of keeping this going without interruption. So they started implementing safety measures to prevent people from putting their fingers in machines and losing it. And then
the whole thing with team building exercises, the morale building, is because the happier you can make your employees, the more productive they are. So it is more beneficial to make your employees happy. Mm-hmm. This has built over industry within the last couple, 200 years. Whenever the Industrial Revolution started, we got in kind of this cluster industry mindset.
Yeah. So the other thing is, it's not just one business that will do this. It's when one business finds a way to succeed in an area, like, oh, hey, we implemented this process, and our employees are better. We boosted morale. Other businesses start adopting that same thing. So it's called the de facto standard, and this occurs throughout businesses, like even businesses in different areas. Like a computer company will look at the business model of some other business and be like, oh, hey, they implemented something here. This is we should start doing that here. Like Christmas bonuses are something that happen in a lot of businesses. That was not the case during the industrial era, like when Marx was writing this. Christmas bonuses weren't a common practice.
That was not a thing after the rebuilding of the economic collapse from the Great Depression.
Yeah.
That came well after even, I think, employee provided health care.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be compensatory, so they wouldn't have to pay as much into employee provided health care. That was something that came well after.
Yeah. Now it is very common practice for businesses to give out Christmas bonuses as an incentive for meeting year-long goals. It's kind of like, hey, you do this thing, here's a Christmas bonus. Here's a little bit to boost your morale, give you incentive to keep doing what you're doing, or to improve the process. Yeah, so businesses saw that and people look at the bottom line, oh, that's costing you money because you're giving out this extra money at the end of the year. And the business is like, no, that's look how much. See, this is what before we offered Christmas bonuses, this is what we were getting. After we started doing this, it cost us more a little bit now. But we're getting more out of it in the long run, so we keep that
Let's say I'm having a car manufactured for me, and I decide I'm going to scrimp on the brake pads. No matter how much I spent on the car, if I did not put enough money into the brake pads, I'm going to get in an accident really quick. Really quick. So I'm going to spend more to make sure that I get more investment out of what I have paid for.
Yeah.
Your weakest part of your production is always your weakest part. And so businesses will spend more to make sure that is no longer their weakest part. This is why we do have vacation days.
Yep.
It's why unions actually grew, is because it made sense. And a lot of businesses clamped on and said, you know what? You guys are right.
Yep.
Vacation days should be allowed. And the longer you're here, the more vacation you can have, because you're a good worker. You can produce more since you've been here 10 years. So we'll give you more vacation because it's compensatory.
Yep.
This is the way it has always worked. A new hire versus someone who's been here for 20 years. I'm going to pay the guy who's been here 20 years more because they know more. But the longer you stay within the company, we will gradually give you a raise and increase your pay. It's going to help your morale. It's going to boost you up. It's going to give you something to aim for. That's why everyone gets raises.
And I will say, there are companies that exist that when it comes time to cut costs or all that sort of thing, what they do is they replace, hey, we just constant turnover.
Yeah.
And those businesses usually maintain or stagnate. They're not the businesses that grow. Those are typically the businesses that you're kind of like, it's just kind of a holdover job because you know you're going to get replaced. The businesses that actually reward their long-term employees more and keep them around, and instead when layoffs comes around, cut the bottom rungs instead of the higher-ups, those are the businesses that are usually growing year over year.
Yep.
Yeah, so...
Or at least able to maintain a
constant increase, yeah.
An increased profit line.
Yeah, it's the businesses that try that turnover ratio where they're like, you're more expensive, get rid of you, I can get rid of you and replace you with 2 people because your salary is so much, and then those 2 people don't produce the same as that one person was producing, and then that business just kind of flounders most of the time when they implement some kind of practice like that, because that's one of those things that people bring up, these socialists bring up, is like, they're just looking to cut costs, and they'll cut the more expensive employees, and then they'll put them like, nope, that's not what most businesses do. Most businesses, it's the other way around. Your seasoned employees stay. The people who just showed up, and you're like, well, we're out of budget, because that just happened to me recently. It's like, we're over budget, we're keeping our seasoned employees, you just got here, you're the first to go.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it all depends. It's not necessarily seasoned, or it is profitable employees.
Yeah. Sorry.
Typically, the ones who have been there longer will be more profitable because they understand they can get things done fast, they can get things done quick, faster than a new hire. So one of the companies I used to work for, I got let go because I was the new hire. However, I was the one operating their entire help desk. They shut down like 6 months later.
Yeah.
I was only supposed to be on that desk for like a month. I was there for 6 months. They did not have another help desk. It was just me. And so when they let me go, all their customer service it dropped. That was just bad planning.
Yeah, and that's what you'd expect as companies that make bad decisions that go away, and companies that make more correct decisions.
We can't offer raises this term. Sorry, but stick with us. We're going to help organize. You teach someone else to operate this desk. We'll get you into another position. Had they tried to balance it out, fine. But they stuck one guy who was kind of the center of operations and then let that guy go. Yeah, what do you expect? Nobody knows how to handle the calls. Nobody can. Yeah, the company shut down a few months later. It's like, it doesn't surprise me. It was a stupid decision.
All right, let's continue breaking this down. So the next thing I've got is, so he's talks more about, bourgeoisie treating their wives as production. Again, none of this is really support. All of this is mostly building off of that stated assumption that is never supported in any other way that I can see. And so the next thing I've got highlighted here is bourgeoisie marriage is, in reality, a system of wives in common, and thus, at the most, what the communists might possibly be reproached with is that they desire to introduce in substitution for this hypothetically concealed an open, legalized community of women. Now, this doesn't quite make sense to me, and I had to read this a couple of times and read this paragraph.
Yeah,
but I guess maybe I should read the full paragraph here and not just that one sentence, because it sounds like, because he talks about this a little bit more. He talks about prostitutes, and it sounds like he's talking about like wife sharing or swapping. And also about the bourgeoisie taking the wives of the proletariats. Like, was this a common thing at when he was writing this? Was that the people who own the factories would have sex with prostitutes, their own wives, and then the wives of their factory workers? Was that a common occurrence? Because then it might make sense why he was talking about women, them only treating women as the means, or their wives as the means of production, is because it sounds like the bourgeoisie he's talking about are into wife swapping and just sleeping with any woman they can because they're the bourgeoisie. I was like,
yeah, okay. So
yeah,
this sounds like Eyes Wide Shut.
yeah.
That nasty movie. Was that a thing? I don't know.
It doesn't sound like it would be a common occurrence, and not during the time period he's talking about. Like, if you're talking about the time period of royals, and even even in Greek societies and Roman societies and stuff like that. Okay, yeah, that historically, yeah.
Are bourgeoisie not content with having the wives and daughters of their proletariats at their disposal, which in his mind the proletariat is kind of like the slave, the help, the underling, right? You're the proletariat, I'll take what I can from you, so I'll also take your wives and your daughters. Not to speak of common prostitutes, take the greatest pleasure in seducing each other's wives. Yeah. What kind of community is this guy in with?
Like, this
sounds just like Eyes Wide Shut, like just giant open orgy community. Maybe everyone wore masks and just screwed everybody. What the?
Throughout in certain periods of history, things like that did exist amongst the oligarchy, right? The aristocrats and stuff like that. During the time period where he's writing this, no. I mean, I'm sure there were this sort of things. I mean, because there was key parties in the 80s and stuff like that, the 70s and 80s. So it probably happens in small communities. But he's acting like this is kind of the norm for anybody who's a business owner, for anybody who owns a factory, anybody w's the head of a company. And I'm like,
I don't know.
Historically, that does not sound accurate at all.
He called that so bourgeoisie marriage is in reality a system of wives in common, and thus, at the most, what the communists might possibly be reproached with is that desire to introduce in substitution for a hypocritically concealed and openly legalized community of women. For the rest, it is self-evident that the abolition of the present system of production must bring with it the abolition of the community of women springing from the system, i.e., of prostitution, both public and private. Yeah, it sounds like he got himself tied up with, like, a orgy group.
Yeah, and he's saying, oh, rather than doing it in secret, we just need to make this public and just hey, women. That's what he's saying, right? No,
if we got rid of proletariats and bourgeoisies, that system will be done away with.
Listen to what he's saying. An openly legalized community of women. That's what he's saying. Communists might be reproached for trying to introduce this.
What he was stating as the openly legalized is the Eyes Wide Shut movie. It is where all the rich guys and their wives showed up and they just started screwing each other. So it's not really prostitution, and yeah, people know there's these other groups of people just screwing around. That's what he called openly legalized community.
No, I think you're reading this. So he says what the communists might possibly be reproached with is that they desire to introduce an openly legalized community of women. Because remember this section that's in so because you got to look at what's in the commas.
They desire to introduce in substitution for hypocritically concealed and openly legalized.
You got to look at the commas, right? When you put a phrase in commas, it's the same thing as putting it in parentheses. It's saying this is when you remember when we used to diagram sentences and you break apart and get to the subject.
Oh, hold on, one sec. We're crossing lines here.
Yeah.
The comma was before in substitution. And it wasn't after.
It is after. It says introduce, comma, in substitution for a hypocritically concealed, comma.
Correct.
So if you're reading this, it says...
You're saying the communists are wanting to look... Right now, there is a hypocritically concealed, openly legalized community of women. The communists are wanting a substitution. As in disbanded. That's the way I'm reading it.
He's saying he wants a substitution, as in openly legalizing that would be the substitution.
No. He's stating it was already openly legalized, as in it's a dirty little like Hollywood.
But it's not open. because he's talking about them doing this in secret.
Yes, it's the open secret would be like the casting couch in Hollywood. If a woman wanted to get a big part, she might have to sleep with the director.
So, okay, let's break this down. So, bourgeoisie marriage, that's the subject. That's the verb. In reality, that's a side, you can cut that out. So, bourgeoisie marriage is a system of wives in common. That's the first part of this compound sentence. And thus, at most, you can cut that as a sentence. The sentence still makes sense. And thus, what the communists might possibly be reproached. So, what the communists, that's subject, right? That's predicate.
What they're wanting is that desire to introduce. What are they wanting to introduce?
An openly legalized community of women.
No. They're wanting to introduce in substitution for a hypocritically concealed and openly legalized community of women.
But I'm looking at the screen right here. So after introduced, there's a comma, and after concealed, there's a comma. Is there not commas in both of those places on yours? So what I'm saying is, in substitution for a hypocritically concealed, that section of the sentence can be removed, and the sentence still...
Oh, I gotcha. He's talking about two different... He's saying within general society, there would be an abolition of prostitution, both public and private, but this... I gotcha. He's just talking about swingers.
Yeah, he's saying that should be the norm for society.
Hypocritically concealed. Oh, okay. I got you.
Yeah,
if I take the section out and just continue it, they desire to introduce an openly legalized community of women.
So what he's talking about is right now, I don't think this is true. It might possibly be true. I haven't seen any historical documents confirming what he's talking about here. And he's talking about the bourgeoisie kind of pass women around amongst themselves. They take advantage of the wives and daughters of their workers. They take advantage of the other bourgeoisie's wives. They have no respect for women. They just go and sleep with everybody, kind of sort of thing. And he's saying, well, what we need to do is we need to open that up to everybody and just say, let's get rid of marriage and let's just, hey, everybody sleep with everybody. And, that's what it sounds like he's advocating for here is it's kind of like, oh, instead of it just being the bourgeoisie sleeping with all the women, let's just say everybody gets to sleep with all the women. Yay! Because he is talking about getting rid of the family. So I guess maybe that's what's being lost here is this entire section is he's talking about the dissolution of the family. And one of the things he was talking about, the reason to dissolve the family is we need to replace education system with a public education. And he's now moved on to, we also need to get rid of the whole system of marriage because bourgeoisie, they don't even respect marriage to begin with. So we should just get rid of that. And instead, we've got this public and private prostitution community of women. And they'll just go around and sleep with everybody and not just the bourgeoisie. That was my reading of this. And again, I highlighted this section and I had to go through and read it a couple times. I'm like, what is he talking about? And now that I'm reading it, I'm like, yeah, he's talking about getting rid of marriage and replacing it with just a community of women that sleeps with anybody for money or he talks about it being prostitution, but I'm not sure exactly how he plans on doing prostitution in a communist society where they're not supposed to have any money. So what are they trading in exchange for sex?
Oh, dude. Oh, it's clicking. Okay, so what is a prostitute?
Someone who trades money for sex.
Yes. And what do prostitutes normally have? Right? If you have a ring of prostitutes, what do they all have?
Pimp, I guess?
Yes. Someone who is the proletariat over the prostitutes.
Yeah.
What he's advocating for, and now it's clicking, is the abolition of that. Where there is just open women who are in public saying, if you want to screw, come screw. There is no cost. It is a public service.
Yeah.
And instead of keeping it in secret,
Yeah,
it's just
that's the free love from the '60s.
crap.
That was free love, right? That's the entire '60s and '70s. He's advocating for that to be
Okay,
how a
now this
society.
making sense because I was wondering why he's talking about the abolition or the abolition. Bringing
Yeah,
with it the abolition of the community of women springing from that system, i.e., of prostitution, both public and private, is because he considers them still as proletariats. If women are going to be sleeping around and if men desire it, why not just make it open and it is just simply a public service? And stop hating on the women. They're just providing a service for what the men. What the?
yeah.
That's messed up. Look at that.
Yeah, but that's why it might like, oh, hey, this
Oh,
might sound
I get
appealing to college kids. They're like, oh, dude, what? We get to just have sex with women, and they're just gonna give it up, and you don't have to pay for anything, and you don't have to marry them, and you don't have to have kids. You can just do that.
For a family. At no point is he advocating that your children are your responsibility. They
Yeah.
are the system's responsibility. It is simply every person is a cog, and as long as your desires are met and you get whatever earthly needs you need, just do your job, and you'll get what you need.
Yep.
That's the entire system. So if men are horny, then there should be a group of women that are just out there in a public area, just like one of the I don't
Brothel.
yeah, like that. Except for they just sit around and wait for guys to screw them, and you don't even pay them. It is a public service.
Yeah.
And because they're providing that public service, they get food and housing.
Yeah.
Dude, what the? Nah, screw that. I mean, that's way shooting past the moon. That's nasty.
But if you think about it, what are feminists advocating? Exactly that. Like the feminist movement is advocating for that. Maybe not as a profession where they just sit around in a location waiting for people to show up and have sex with them, but they're advocating for a lifestyle where you don't have kids, you don't have a family, you can do whatever you want, and you can give away your sex to free, one night stands and no attachments, no strings. They're living out what he's saying. Oh yeah, that should be how relationships are.
No.
And we're seeing the devastating effects of that.
Your relationship with humanity.
Yeah. That's
seeing how you become disassociated. That's how you get Jack the Rippers. That's how you get serial killers. That's how you get mass molesters and
and that's how you get people committing suicide in mass. And
there is no family to protect. There are no children of what you're protecting. There's no wives you're protecting. It is just let me do what I want, and as long as I'm not killing anybody, they're just a public service. I still get my 3 meals a day and a place to sleep.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, man. That little paragraph. That's gross. What the crap was going through this guy's head?
But we see those same philosophies and ideas play out in U.S. history as they became more and more dominant in our schools and in our universities. Those ideas played out in the U.S., and we saw the decline of a society from the 1950s where you had that strong nuclear family. Granted, it wasn't a perfect society by no means, but we see this completely decline in the 60s and 70s where these ideas became prominent in academia.
Well, yes. It's because if a woman could withhold herself and she remained a virgin because she was looking for a proper husband, that brought about more desire and respect from said husband stating, now I found my wife. If you found your wife and she's already been with 8 different guys, I mean, you may love her, but how much respect can you necessarily have?
Well, and it's also during that time where they had the swingers and key parties, right? That's kind of that.
Oh man, the whole paragraph. What the crap?
Yeah. So the 1950s, like, hey, there was the
community of women. Jeez, that's that's probably where that movie even came from. That Eyes Wide Shut. That's exactly what the crap that was.
Oh,
that was a nasty movie.
Yeah, I never saw it, but I know what you're talking about. Then.
Yeah, I started watching part of it, and I just felt dirty. It's like, no, screw that, because it was while I worked at Blockbuster. I was supposed to watch all the new movies, so it was like, I'm like, it's a new movie. It's got Tom Cruise, and I had to go like take 2 showers, kind of like after 8mm. I had
Yeah.
to go take a shower after that. I
It's
was just
like,
like,
ugh.
ugh.
Yeah. One of
So,
those movies that make you
movie.
feel. Yeah. So I got a similar feeling from Joker, but not to the same extreme. Like, there is a possibility I'd watch Joker a second time, but.
Oh, I thought you said Joe Dirt.
No,
Joke.
Joker, the
Watch that
Joaquin
one.
Phoenix one.
I'm a TV guy. Wait till it's streaming properly.
Yeah. It's kind of got that same kind of makes you feel dirty at the end vibe to it. Not to the extent of Seven or Requiem for a Dream or.
Well, see, 7 I was okay with. I liked the twist ending, but it was harsh.
Yeah. No, that was too much
I
for
just
me.
felt disgusted because I felt like I just got dragged through that whole community and I didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
Kind of like Lord of War. I thought that was a good movie, but I felt really nasty after, and I had to go take a shower because like I just got dragged through a whole lifestyle that I don't think I wanted to be in. It's like that. So that's what the Eyes Wide Shut is. It's just what the. This is the most messed up community. Who does this garbage?
Yeah.
And I'm getting dragged through it. I don't think I ever finished it. I just at some point I was like, I'm done.
Right.
But it was the popular movie when I was working there, so that's why I rented it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So
I don't even know what the movie's about. All I remember is just a bunch of people with masks screwing around.
So it is almost 9 o'clock, and we are still on page 25 in my version. So I'm gonna kind of
like a page. Well, I mean, that was messed up. I didn't.
Yeah.
We read through that a couple of times, and I don't understand when he's talking about a community of women.
Yeah. I still don't know if there's historical to back up his assertion that this was going on, but his solution is more repugnant. It's like,
it's nasty.
It's like, if this is going on, that needs to stop, and you need to, you know, the solution is to respect the sanctity of marriage, and what these guys are doing is not respecting the sanctity of marriage.
I mean, it sounds like he's saying instead of going to Starbucks before you head off to work, go in for a quick screw, then grab a cup of coffee.
Yeah. He's basically advocating for the system they've got in Idiocracy. It's like, oh, I need to go to Starbucks. Dude, we don't have time for a hand job.
Yeah. Gee. How is that not supposed to degrade women just overall? What? I don't. Maybe communism is not representative for women at all.
I don't know.
I haven't read anything pro women, but that statement.
Yeah.
Maybe he thinks that's all they're good for is just ruin and appropriate.
Well, if you look at what he did in his real life, yeah, that seems to be what he thinks all women are good for, because he had sex with the help at his house, knocked one of them up, got them pregnant, and then kicked her out.
Yeah, like an asshole.
All right. So then he starts talking about how we need to abolish. So he's established that trying to, you know, his arguments for abolishing the family, and his alternative systems that would replace the family. He goes on to talking about abolishing countries and nationality. So the section I've got highlighted here is this little bit down the page, close to the end, where it says, the charges against communism made from a religious, philosophical, and generally from an ideological standpoint do not deserve of serious examination. Are not deserving of serious examination. I'm like, what?
Wait.
So the charges against communism made from a religious, a philosophical, and generally from an ideological standpoint are not deserving of serious examination.
Oh, okay, yeah, I see that paragraph. That's right above whoever highlighted this statement. Okay, yeah, I see that now.
Criticisms of communism, like, so religious, philosophical, and ideological.
Okay. Trying to put myself into this guy's line of thinking. If we were to put ourselves in his mental state, he has no appreciation for humankind as an individual. We are simply humankind as a machine, as an entity, right? Meaning, we would morph. You would think of each person as a blood cell. as bone marrow.
Yeah.
An integral part that makes the system run. You have your job, but you simply do it because you belong.
Mm-hmm.
This is to build the body of humanity. So this whole open community of women, whatever, it is simply to make humankind move along. And if that's the way you view humanity as this amorphous blob of this is how we all co-interact, then yeah, you don't need religion to make your blood cells flow. You don't religion to make your muscles grow stronger. You don't religion to have stronger bones.
Yeah.
Or not just religion, but yeah, philosophy in general. Basically, do your job. Don't think about it. You're part of the bigger body.
Yeah. That
The
is a
only thing that
scary
can
thought.
the bigger body is the brain.
Because
Through
so
that,
so I know plenty of people who would agree with the religious perspectives. Like, yeah, they just completely dismiss religion, saying religion has no place. I don't regard religion. I can understand that, but when he says philosophical,
yeah, don't even contemplate your situation.
yeah,
Don't even think existential thoughts of why am I here? What am I doing in life? You don't need that. You're a cog in the machine. You're a cell in the body. You're a component in the overall of humanity. That's what he's thinking. He's
yeah,
thinking of humanity as a one massive organism with each person being a cell within that organism.
yeah,
And the thing that controls it all is the brain. The rest just simply does what they're told and is only provided what they need to produce whatever it is their job is. As in, your lungs help provide oxygen to your bloods to give oxygen to your muscles. Your muscles don't need any time off. They don't need vacation. They're muscles. Do your job.
yeah, yeah. And so
This
he's
mindset of humanity is
yeah. He elaborates more on that in the next paragraph here when he's talking about. So this is his reason for dismissing religious, philosophical, and ideological charges against communism, because he says, does it require deep intuition to comprehend that man's ideas, views, and conception, in one word, a man's consciousness, change with every change in the condition of his material existence?
yeah. Again, so he's looking for just people to fit in their one
Yeah.
spot on life, and once they fit in, he's like, what else is there to think about?
Yeah.
Stop and just do.
It's like, yeah, he's saying basically your view of the world will change if we just change your physical surroundings. So, yeah, there's no reason to debate any of this because it's all materialistic. It's all what the physical. There's no reason to contradict any of these positions. So his arguments for communism are are philosophical, and I don't know why I couldn't say that word. His arguments, he's making philosophical arguments for his ideology that is communism. And he's saying, you can't make any kind of criticism against my philosophical ideology because basically people's condition determine. And I'm like, well, then your conditions determine your current views and your current ideas. So if your material existence, if your conditions of your material existence changed, you wouldn't have the same philosophy that you currently do. This argument and the support for it are dismissed by itself because
hold on.
It is a very this is what is called a null hypothesis. He's established that communism exists and you cannot make a credible rebuttal to its existence. That's what he's claiming here. That's the same thing as the climate change. Oh, you can't doubt climate change. It's proven. And anybody who's just that's essentially his braggadocious claim here.
Yeah. However, what he's talking about, a lot of it is the mindset of humanity.
Yeah.
Right? Our mindset is let's excel where we can. Let's prove our worth. Let's build what we can with our own two hands. But that humanity matters. I'm not planning on trouncing on anybody. I don't want to leave anybody in the dirt. I'm not going to step on someone else's face and say, screw you, this is going to push me ahead. That's not how we were raised. We're just raised to excel with our own thoughts, with our own abilities, with our own talent. let's grasp what we can out of life. Not, while still the rest of humanity is humanity. That's kind of the golden rule in the Bible, is treat others how you want to be treated. The rest of humanity is there to be respected and observed and understood. They're just like us. It is humanity.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of a Christian perspective, is that people
Yeah. So
okay, people are equal and deserve respect. However, your life is in your hands and you need to do something with it. You get stuff like the tale of the talents. The guy who buried his talents in the ground got absolutely nothing. Guy's like, nope, cast you out.
Yep.
Because he didn't actually do anything with his life.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning men are supposed to strive. They're supposed to struggle. They're supposed to become better, smarter, faster, stronger, whatever. Men and women, everyone's included. It's all humanity. This aspect states the only job you have is where you fit within the global communal body, and once you're there, and will provide what it means for you to sustain yourself, and that's all you get. You are that cog in that spot, and there you go.
Yeah.
And it is humanity as an amorphous blob, not humanity as individuals. It is intersectionality at its greatest, to where everyone is in a single group. So fine, it gets past race, it gets past gender. It just simply states, this is your lot in life, and that's all it will ever be. And if everyone is in that same lot in life, there's no reason for a bourgeoisie. Everyone has their place.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there still has to be the brain to move the body. I think he equated himself to stating, I'm the guy that would be the brain.
That would be. That's, and if you, that seems to be the typical Marxist mentality. Is they always view themselves as not part of the cogs of the machine, being as the one.
Yeah. He has no relation to humanity, yet he feels he deserves to control it.
Yeah.
He is above humanity.
And
that guy is the worst.
Yeah. If you listen to people who subscribe to Marxist ideology, when every time they say, "Oh, that wasn't real communism," it's always because they think they know how to implement it, and if they were in charge of it, they could run it successfully.
Yeah, as if here's humanity, and they're up here. The rest of humanity has their job. I'm just the guy who can see how it should operate, so I will dictate from here.
Yeah.
I think he put himself in that same position.
Yep.
He sounds like a spoiled pansy ass that grew up with having no stress in his life. He just got to do whatever the hell he wants, screw whoever he wants, lived a lofty life, and then thought, I'm smarter than that, and put himself above people. He sounds like a guy who never struggled, who did not have to fight for something in his life that was earned. If at any point you have fought for something and earned it, you understand what the power of your two hands do and how it separates you from others. Everyone has the potential to do so, but did you, as an individual, do it?
Mm-hmm.
Bill Gates grabbed that potential and built his own company. All these other founders of massive tech companies did the same thing. They used their own two hands, their own potential, and built it up. And we see multiple companies like this. Other people figure out how to get through life just by getting through one situation after another, relying on their own prowess, their own understanding, their own two hands. We live as individuals, but the best way to live as individuals is to respect other individuals and understand we're all on the same path. I'm not going to kick you in the face and say F you so I can get a better promotion. But I am going to struggle hard and say, I'm going to beat you to this promotion unless you beat me there first. The competition aspect, no problems with that. It's what keeps everybody constantly growing outward, becoming better and bigger and stronger.
Mm-hmm.
But what he's advocating for is everyone simply has their place. There is no competition. There's no anything.
Yeah.
You are just the one cell in the body. You're the one cog in the wheel. You have no place other than the place you're in.
Yeah. So, and a part of that I wanted... So I did stop reading this sentence before the end of it, and I wanted to clarify. So if you read this sentence in full, it does end with a list where he says, change in the condition of his material existence, in his social relations, and in his social life. But what Marx has been establishing with the dissolution of the family and with the dissolution of nation and country is he's saying there is no social relation, there is no social life. So all that's left, because he's gone through and said, oh, we need to get rid of all of these social institutions. Then all you have is your material existence. So at this point in his argument, he said, yeah, all you're left with is the material, because according to what I've argued for here, there is no social relations. Your children are not important to you. Your children are just the same as everybody else because they're already in the government schools. We've eliminated marriages because now women are just, women just go around to sleep with whoever, whenever. They're providing their public service of sex. So what's the point of you don't have children, you don't care about your children are not any special than any other children in this society. You don't have a wife, so there's no woman that has a special significance to you. I'm anticipating, he hasn't mentioned friendships or anything along those lines, but at this point friendships would be kind of mere casual acquaintances. And I guess that's not just in his perspective, that's kind of true in real life. It's like, well, if you have a disagreement with your friend, or if you have a disagreement with your wife,
and personal relationships, as in wife, children, it's already regarded. Friendships are meh.
Yeah, friendships are kind of secondary. Like, people make friendships and end friendships all the time. Family is supposed to be a more permanent social. So he's saying, he's already stripped out all the social aspects of this, leaving only the material at this point.
This sounds very similar to, like, Akira. That just was it? Wait, no. Okay, Akira was the guy on the bike with the jacket.
Yeah.
It was Tetsuo. He was the one who kind of turned into that amorphous blob.
Yeah.
And started absorbing everything, and it became a part of him. Yeah, he's kind of like Tetsuo in that movie Akira.
Yeah.
Yeah, all powerful. Yeah, it sounds wonderful. Everyone's in sync. Everyone's doing this. Until none of it works, because that's not how people are.
Yep.
People are not cells. People are individuals. People are not a cog. They're not a component. They're themselves.
All right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I see why. Now. Oh. Okay. I see very much why communism and Marxism appeals to those with intersectional ideologies, where they have to group themselves with one another.
Yep.
They don't have strength to stand on their own, and as they combine themselves with others, they say, hey, let's just combine everybody. Whereas those who say, screw that, I can do it on my own. I don't need this. I don't need that. I don't need a wife. I don't need children. But if I want wife and I want children, I'm going to teach them that they can do it on their own. I'm going to teach my wife that she actually does matter, and that she is a critical part, and that is the reason I have a wife. I'm going to treat each person with respect. I'm going to treat each person as whomever they are. It's completely, that's almost a cancerous cell within communism. Free thinking like that is cancer.
Yeah. All right. So there's only one more. I mean, there's a page and then a paragraph left of this section. So I think I'm gonna try to barrel through this. It's 9:10 right now.
Let's do it.
So,
let's cover what's left.
So this is the page 26. So he's already established, hey, we need to get rid of countries, families, and and we've got this society where there is no real social order. It's all material. And then you can people can change places, and it makes no difference because everybody's going to get their sexual gratification taken care of. Everybody's going to get their immediate physical needs taken care of. And that's all they should need.
So here's one thing I am noticing. Mm-hmm. That national differences and antagonism between peoples are daily more and more vanishing, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Owing to the development of the bourgeoisie, to freedom of commerce, to the world market, to uniformity in the mode of production and in the conditions of life corresponding there too.
Yeah.
Basically, when people can learn to trade and not war, which is a more capitalist ideology,
Mm-hmm.
he's stating that those are what are vanishing, as
Yeah.
in is the ultimate goal of communism, and yet the thing that is actually producing it is not communism.
Yeah. it's the bourgeoisie or the capitalists that he's criticizing is saying, yeah, it's removing the need for country being the unifying thing, and I'm in agreement with that. I don't think there's so while there is a need for countries when you're talking about other countries that want to dominate you and your family or whatever, yeah, then you're like, well, then those guys can stay over there, and all of us who don't want their takeover of our society, that's why we'd need a country. It is to protect ourselves from those other viewpoints. But when it comes to if all other countries are just, being diplomatic with each other and just engaging in free trade, then there's no need for a country. But we still have totalitarian states and societies that want to take over and implement their rules. And it's like, well, as long as those countries exist, we cannot dissolve countries currently. And here's the other thing is yeah, this is the point keeps bringing up when people bring up anarcho-capitalism is, well, somebody is going to want to seize power because that's historically what has occurred. Is eventually, so even if you got an entire planet where there is no government or there's no country to worry about and everybody's free trading, when you dissolve all countries, someone is going to want to come into power to take over, because that's just historical. So
people have that drive.
Yeah, that
it's a thing.
I think there are. So when it comes to anarcho-capitalism, I think there are systems that could be put into place to dissuade such individuals, but that's something that is that and until there is a real world example, it's all theoretical and not it's almost a waste of time to talk about what could potentially be done to stop it, because the only thing that would prove those ideas would be a real world example. But since we have countries currently and we don't have any test environment to see it play out in the real world, and until then it's just hypotheticals, and it will always be hypotheticals. All right, but going down to so he's already made those particular arguments, and going back down to what is essentially kind of like the last page here. He's got a couple of things in quotes here. This is one I've got highlighted. There are, besides eternal truths, such as freedom, justice, etc., that are common to all states of society. Oh, sorry, I guess I read that a little bit wrong because there's commas. There are, besides eternal truths such as freedom. Yeah, that's why I was like, man, that sounded weird. Okay, but communism abolishes eternal truths. It abolishes all religion and all morality instead of constituting them on abolishes all morality instead of constituting them on a new basis. Wait, hang on a second here. Why does that sound weird? So, but communism abolishes eternal truths. It abolishes all religion and all morality instead of constituting them on a new basis. There we go. It therefore acts in contradiction to all past historical experiences. So, because this is in quotes, this is a criticism of communism, and he's trying to rebut it. Now, this seems like an adequate criticism of communism. It's abolishing these truths like freedom, justice, and individuality.
No. What he's stating is, as each new era came about, old religions failed, new religions popped up, but there were some mainstays. The ideas of freedom and justice and religion and things like that. And he's saying, obviously, since those just seem to be getting passed along and along and along, they are part of an older system that has just constantly failed us. They all need to be gone. Yeah. They all need to be overthrown.
Yeah, so that was the criticism people are making of communism. I think that's an apt criticism, but his defense of it is the next paragraph here. So, what does this accusation reduce itself to? The history of all past societies has consisted in the development of antagonism that assumed different forms at different epochs. But whatever form they may have taken, one fact is common to all past ages: the exploitation of one part of society by the other. So that's why he's saying these eternal truths can't be eternal truths, and therefore they need to be abolished because they always led to societies where exploitation occurred. So that's his defense against this argument, or his attempt at a defense against that argument that is in quotes. So, and he goes on to say, no wonder then that the social consciousness of past ages, despite all the multiplicity and variety of displays, moves within certain common forms or general ideas which cannot completely vanish except for the total disappearance of class antagonism. So that's why he's arguing for the abolition, or the what's a good word for letting go?
Dissolution of religion, of the class I get, but also of I guess truths or known truths of history.
Mm-hmm.
They may not necessarily actually be true. It is what is simply was known as truth to him. So his view on truth is subjective.
Yeah.
All religions, all morality.
Yeah.
So basically, it is a massive machine just constantly eating up humanity, and if you do not comply, then you are of old school or old epic times, and it no longer applies.
Yeah.
Once everybody on the globe is part of said encompassing mass mechanism, everyone will think the same, everyone will believe the same, everyone will do the same.
Mm-hmm. So that he's arguing that would be a good thing, but what he fails to acknowledge here is the current incarnation of societies at the time when he's writing this have been the least exploitive of all previous societies. We are seeing over time, as societies improve, as we gain in technology, and as he was saying just earlier about the division between countries is kind of being rubbed out by the establishment of the bourgeoisie and trade between countries and open communication that's involved with that trade. But he's not acknowledging that as a step away from exploitation and to less exploitation over time. He's not acknowledging that whatsoever.
He is advocating for the Borg.
Yeah.
He's a hive mindist.
Yeah. So that's essentially what collectivists kind of view everything. That's why, that humanity could become the Borg, and I'm like, nope.
That's his aim.
Yeah, I'm like, every time people have been every time a society has tried to organize people as if they are all the same like that, the people in that society rebel. There is not enough authority or totalitarian or
because
pressure that you can put on people that would cause them to all conform. There's always going to be a resistance effort.
It's because people want to be individuals.
Yeah.
You are an individual. Every single person, regardless of race, skin color, ethnicity, whatever age, they are an individuals, and that is simply how they view themselves.
And that is
part of our own existentialism, and will constantly be is, I am me, I'm not you. So why is it that if we are both exactly the same, I'm not you, I must be something different?
And that
is logic.
That is one of those truths that was predominant in the Enlightenment upon which the U.S. was founded. Those ideas led to the Declaration of Independence and were incorporated into parts of the Constitution. Is the idea that we are all individuals and everybody has their own right to life and pursuit of happiness. What communism, or what Marx is doing, is the exact opposite of that. And granted, he didn't know at the time because we've got the I don't know, blessing or the what's the we have the advantage. We have the advantage of hindsight on both philosophies. The philosophy of the founders of the United States led to one of the most prosperous countries in the world, one of the least exploitive countries that has ever existed in history, and a system that constantly purges itself of exploitation. When it finds, hey, we're doing something that is exploitative, we cut it out of our system. Contrast that to the societies being produced by Marxism. It's the exact opposite of that. It's societies that are more exploitative over time, that lead to more oppression and more abuse of their citizens. And like I said, it's the exact opposite. And we can see that's what results from the system that he's proposing. But because it's his ignoring the U.S.'s example of, oh, we've got a society here that has reduced exploitation over time, and this is one of the things, because this was after the abolishment of slavery. When at the time he's writing this in the mid 1800s. Slavery was abolished.
1965 in the U.S.
No, wait, 1865?
I think so. Isn't that when the emancipation, or was it the emancipation?
I was about to say, wasn't it? It should have been earlier. Right?
13th Amendment. Nope, was not earlier.
1865.
Now, there was a ruling of no additional imported slaves, but slavery in and of itself was not abolished. I thought it was 1865.
It might be 1865 because civil rights was 1860, so it was about the 100-year, right?
Yeah. Okay. 13th Amendment passed by Congress on January 31st of 1865. That's the abolition of slavery. The Emancipation Proclamation, I think, was 2 years before that. So I'm thinking like December 1863.
Okay, so since the Communist Manifesto would have been 10 to 20 years prior to that, he wouldn't have that perspective. So yeah, I shouldn't fault him for that, because that's something we know about that he wouldn't have. And even at the time, even if they were happening around the same time, he wouldn't have knowledge of it till probably 10 years after it actually occurred. So at the time of the writing of this, 1848, he wouldn't have known that the U.S. would lead to the abolition of slavery, not just in the U.S., but also in the U.K. and worldwide. That I shouldn't say the U.S. led to that, because it was more capitalism led to that, because that happened in the U.K. first. But
if you break all of this down and you look at it, his interpretation of humanity is not a group of people cooperating.
Yeah.
It is one amorphous body where every single person is a cog or cell in the overall body of humanity.
Yeah, and certain factions
are of no importance. You die, whatever happens, we've got plenty of other cells in there. But you continuing to do your job as told is what matters.
Yeah.
If you do not, you're a cancer on society. You are.
That's why he's talking about the bourgeoisie. Was like, oh yeah, they're not, they're not interchangeable cells. They think themselves better.
For advancement, it doesn't allow individuality or excellence of those who are able to achieve it. It is simply the stagnation of humanity as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
If that's all the body is ever allowed to grow to, then don't expect humanity to ever grow beyond that, ever.
Yeah. So we have the advantage of seeing the outcomes of both philosophies. The philosophies established by capitalism in the U.S. and in Europe, and also seeing out the outplay of Marxist ideology, and that resulted in Nazi Germany. Wow, I'm drawing a blank. I want to say Stalin in Italy, but that's not correct. Mussolini's Italy, Pol Pot, Mao Zedong,
Wait, you mean
Che
Russia?
Guevara. Yeah, Joseph Stalin in Russia. Yeah, for some reason I was trying to come up with who was in charge of Italy and kept coming with Joseph Stalin. I'm like, no, he was not in charge of Italy.
Mussolini.
Yeah. Mussolini's Italy, Russia under Stalin,
You guys all had
and
the
Lenin.
emotion of one united body.
Yeah, because they were going off of his ideology, and we saw that it led to a society of more oppression, of more exploitation, more brutalization of their populations.
Well, yes.
His perspective was that it was supposed to have the opposite effect, and yet we saw the United States and England and other places that were adopting capitalism and more individualist philosophies, that they were prospering, while countries built off of Marxist philosophy were squandering and were abusing their populations. The system he was criticizing, we were seeing a relaxation of oppression. We were seeing a reduction of it over time. He wasn't paying attention to that. He was just saying, oh, well, every society abuses people. Every society exploits. And it's like, well, we've seen less exploitation as we improve, as our ideas get better, as we learn more about what it means to be human, as we learn more about how to exist in our world, how to provide for ourselves, how to, create food at increased rates, how to produce more
sustainable rates.
Yeah, we have become less and less like the detestable societies that he started off criticizing.
Well, okay, think of it this way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look at the human body, and from the perspective I'm saying communism is, let's preserve the human body in its current state, and every cell needs to operate in exactly the way it's meant, and we will preserve this as humanity.
Yeah.
So now, if you look at capitalism, that would be more along the lines of, we have a body that can grow, but over here, all of a sudden, your heart has now 2 times the capacity.
Yep.
Because of greater innovation, because of somebody decided to excel in this area. Now your heart actually beats stronger.
Yep.
It's more like evolution of mankind with capitalism, as in the body can grow into something greater, and the stagnation of mankind with communism, stating this is our idea of it, and nothing goes out of place.
Yeah, and what he fails to realize is that stagnation is
the death of mankind.
Yeah. If that is the most you can ever do, the only way to go from there is down, and that's what he's overlooking. You can, if this is peak, this is the maximum, this is all we'll ever need to do, the only place to go, you can't go up any higher, it's only down from there.
It coincides with about every understanding of environmentalism, of even if you go with a religious perspective, or if you go with a Darwinism perspective, if you are not growing, if you're not increasing your capacity, if you're not evolving into something better, you will die.
Yeah. And I like that phrase from Shawshank Redemption: "Get busy living or get busy dying." Stagnation and death are essentially the same. A stagnant pool of water is just as deadly as toxin, right? It's like, hey, if you've got a pool of water, even if it's clean when it starts, it will, if it's not flowing, if it's stagnating, eventually it will become toxic. Or you could have just a pool that is toxic to begin with. Both of those are essentially interchangeable. Now, if you've got a flowing stream of clean water, that's living. Life can exist in that. Life cannot exist in a stagnant pond that's not. It will eventually die, and the same as life trying to exist in a toxic or a pond or a source of water that's already toxic. Both of those are pretty much are pretty much interchangeable. The only place where life thrives is that river. That of those three.
Change. Yeah. It is our adaptability to change that makes us constantly succeed.
Yep.
So without being allowed to change, we cannot succeed.
All right. So we are at the end of this section where he's got this list of 10 bullet points.
Where he stated something about separating everybody into land segments.
I might have skipped over that because I was only going off the things that I was kind of highlighting. If you see that in there
Yeah,
and you wanted to talk about that.
I remember in my initial read through, that was kind of one of the things that hit me as like his understanding was to separate everybody into having a certain number of acres of land and making a proportionate, as in he does not believe in a centralized
that might be actually the next section if I'm not.
Oh, maybe it was.
So
I read through all of this a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And then we did the deep dive.
Because this is again the second section where he's talking about getting rid of all the things that separate what he considers the bourgeoisie and the proletarians. Like, yeah, get rid of all this sort of thing and equalize everybody. So, I think the next thing is where he actually starts talking about individual propositions for what we should do. But there's this list of 10 items here that he talks about. Says these measures will, of course, be different in different countries. Nevertheless, in most advanced countries, the following will be pretty generally applicable. Number 1, abolition of property in land and abolition of all rents of land to public purposes. Mm-hmm. Number 2, heavy progressive and graduated income tax.
I'm wondering why he used that term heavy.
Yeah, progressive and graduated income tax. And what did the U.S. do? Oh, we turned a flat tax into a progressive and graduated income tax.
Yeah. But I mean, why heavy? It's assuming most of what you make, you don't necessarily need to survive. Yeah. I'm going to take that and allocate it elsewhere.
Yep. So, and number 3, abolition of all rights of inheritance.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
Yeah. Number 4, confiscation of all the property of all immigrants and rebels. Immigrants with an E, so that. Immigrants with an. Is there a different pronunciation of those two?
I think it is simply just pronunciation. Basically, if you are not part of this society, if you want to come into the society, we're going to confiscate everything, and you will just meld into said society. That it's what I'm interpreting from this.
Immigrants with an I are people coming into the country. Immigrants with an E are people leaving the country. So he's saying, anybody who doesn't subscribe to anybody who's not following the rules or is trying to leave, you take all this stuff.
The people fighting against said system.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Okay, centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and an exclusive monopoly. That sounds like something the U.S. introduced in 1913.
Yes, it does. It sounds like every failing economy introduced at some point in their history.
Yeah.
Centralized banking.
Yep.
I mean, man, hopefully the internet grows rapidly enough and learns from its mistakes not to have centralized.
Yeah. So he got number 2 and 5 to be established in the U.S. after the writing of this. Centralization. So it was number 6. Centralization of the means of communication and transport in the hands of the state. Ooh.
That's we pretty much have that.
Yeah, the FTC and the what's that? The one that does flights. Is it just transportation? What's the Department of Transportation?
TCA. TCA. Is that it?
Is it TCA? Is that the federal version of it? I don't remember.
Anyways, yes, it's understood that most of that is definitely restricted and parsed.
Not seeing TCA, but that doesn't seem like I guess maybe that's not a federal. But we do have a federal department that is in charge of communications in the FTC, and then a federal department that's in charge of transportation. I don't remember the acronym off the top of my head. It might just be Department of Transportation, but.
Are you sure? TCA? Yeah. Aren't those the guys that frisk everybody?
That's TSA, but that's a subsection of it.
Okay. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
I think it just might be U.S. Department of Transportation. That's the TSA is under the Department of Transportation.
PSA.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking of.
So he got number 2, number 5, and number 6 established in the United States because these were not in place at the time when he wrote this in the U.S. Number 7, extension of factories and instruments of production owned by the state, the bringing into cultivation of wastelands, and the improvement of soil generally in accordance with a common plan. Now, this one, I am not sure. So, the extension of factories and instruments.
Some of that, I mean, so that could be, say, like the Harley-Davidson bailout.
Yeah.
Maybe part of Part 7. A certain of the bank bailouts could possibly be under Part 7. But as cultivation of wastelands and improvement of the soil generally, that we already have a lot aside from that 7th point. We already have government stating, hey, if you can produce such and such crop.
Yeah, there's subsidies that do for the soil generally. But as far as I know, all waste management is handled by the state. I don't know of any... I mean, granted, a private company may be subcontracted to do that, but all landfills and things of those nature are owned by the state. I don't know of any public...
And above that is the ECA?
Possibly the EPA?
Or EPA, sorry, not ECA, EPA?
Yeah.
Possibly.
I don't remember, but yeah, as far as I know, all waste management is handled by the state. There is no private enterprise that owns a private landfill that isn't subcontracted by the government. It's like, hey, you're taking it, we're paying you to handle our waste.
Yeah.
That the government paying a private industry to handle their waste is...
So
it's just
partially into step 7, because we do have certain government subsidies for certain crops, certain crop types depending on the cycle, but wastelands and the improvement of the soil in general, I think it's kind of up to the state, at least for now. Well, that I can agree. We're like halfway into step 7.
Okay, so number 8. Equal liability of all to work. Establishment of industrial armies, especially for agriculture.
I think that's practically irrelevant nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, man, one combine can do the work of like 100 people picking whatever crop is out there.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. So he says industrialized armies, I'm guessing to protect crops?
In modern countries, we don't have armies protecting crops. In fact, that is our main export, is crops to third world countries.
Yeah.
I think
but at the time when he was writing this was probably something like, oh, yeah, we definitely need this. This is
attention or something to think about nowadays. With modern, constant scientific advancements, we can make more food than this country can eat. Obviously, since heart disease and obesity is on the rise, we're going to have way too much.
Well, so thankfully the U.S. has avoided this, but I will say in the USSR, they did have armies guarding the fields because people were starving to death and they were trying to come onto the fields to get extra food. So they had to have guards protecting the food supply.
So far, within human society advancement, food production has been one of our biggest mainstays. The more we seem to advance, the more food we can produce out of whatever land we've got.
Yeah.
So step 8 doesn't. I think that's just diminished. It's just going to appear.
Yeah. So there is the equal liability of all to work, and that's something I was like, man. I was reading through this, and I was like, dude, how many times has a communist come onto some thread or some chat room and said, oh, well, capitalism requires you to work? And I'm like, dude, right here, you have to work. Equal liability of all to work. That's not a criticism of capitalism. Every system in existence, you are required to work. There's no system...
You need to do something. At no point in the entirety of human existence, of any existence ever, did people say, "Yeah, sit on your fat lazy ass and we'll protect you." Sounds good.
Yeah, that like for I guess the royalties and stuff like that, they might have, but it was never the fact. It was like, oh, if you don't want to work, you don't have to, and yet that's
that would be a legit patriarchy or matriarchy. That's not
yeah,
that's
yeah.
not communism or capitalism. That's
But
something else.
there are so many of these misinformed people who are arguing as like, oh, you have to work or you starve to death under capitalism. I'm like, you also have to work under communism. So how is that a criticism of capitalism?
You will work.
There is not a system that has been proposed that has devised a way for people not that would not require people to work. It doesn't exist. And they're like, oh yeah, but automation. I'm like, yeah, when we get there, we'll get there. Whether capitalism or communism, if we get to the point of automation, then yes. If everything is automated, then nobody has to work. How is that a get rid of capitalism and go communism? Because eventually everything will be automated. I'm like, if you have a capitalist society and everything gets automated, then nobody has to work.
Capitalism is the fastest way to a fully automated society.
Yeah.
Not communism. Not even.
Yeah, not even close. So, but if their argument is, and I'm like, well, if your argument is that everything's gonna get automated, everything is on track to get automated under capitalism. So how is that an argument for communism? I don't quite get the logic of that particular argument because there is no logic behind it. All right.
Oh, there's not.
Moving on.
9, I don't see how that relates to anything modern.
Yeah, so a combination of agricultural with manufacturing industries, gradual abolition.
Yeah. That's just general marketing.
Of all distinction between town and country by a more equitable distribution of the populace over the country.
Yeah, I don't even know how that.
I mean, technically that kind of happened naturally because most agriculture is owned by large manufacturing companies, like, you know. So
well, that would be a distribution of manufacturing companies that require certain other said products that come from whatever other manufacturing companies, and these are globalized companies, so it's not even just here in the U.S. They've got markets all over the world and production factories, and I don't think that.
Yeah, so here's something that he is saying that is not in place is the abolition of town and country and a more equitable distribution of populace over a country. That is not in place. We've got these central hubs of cities where people just congregate, and then we've got these rural areas where there's sparse populations. And then we've got entire sections of Wisconsin and Montana where there's nobody for miles and miles and miles.
Okay, well, I mean, that so what he means by a more equitable distribution of the population over the country.
Yeah, it's just a spread out of the population.
Earlier, and I need to find where I read that because he actually gave
okay, yeah, so that might be in this section then.
No, I don't think it's in this section. I don't know where I read that. I'll have to dig through, but I thought he said
if he's saying that in point. So all of these points relate to something he's kind of either alluded to or stated in this section. So he might have talked about that previously in this section. Or it might be in section 3. I don't remember. It's been too long. But yeah, if you find that, we'll talk about that next week. But it's almost 9:45.
Yeah, I don't disagree with for the most part.
Yeah,
what we've gone through. So free education for all children in the public schools. If we've got public schools, yeah, it should be available to everybody. That's fine. Our taxpayer dollars are paying for our children's education. Everybody should be able to be educated. Fine. Abolition of children's factory labor in its present form.
Yeah, we did that.
That's already done with. We've got child labor laws. You got to be at least like 16 before you can even get a part-time job at a Dairy Queen.
Mm-hmm.
It is what it is. And in combination of education with industrial production. Nope. That's fun.
Yes and no.
What do you mean yes and no?
If you look at the public school system
that actually told you actual production.
No, so the
You remember
combination.
the class that told you how to fill out a paycheck,
No,
as
no,
in
that's
my deposit slip? Do you remember a class
no,
with
no, no,
that?
no. So that's not. But if you look at the current education system, it is designed to train people to be either soldiers or factory workers. That's the Prussian model that is used by pretty much every public school system in existence.
And I would argue that it's more towards just soldiers because factory workers.
Yeah, it's not specific to each factory. I get that, but it is the mentality where they teach you, oh, get an education, get a job, get a good education, get a job. That's the mindset people leave high school with. Um,
Correct. I mean,
which
so we've got, say, like biology departments in high school, and you had to take
yeah,
some biology classes. How many of your jobs
yeah.
have
So
been?
I guess I should say not industrialized production, but it is training people to be workers.
No. This is a part where I have a little bit of a discrepancy with, and it's possibly because of the way I view education. I am very disgruntled with high school education. I'm very
Mm-hmm.
extremely disgruntled with college education. I mean,
Yeah,
college can go shove yourself up your own rectum. College can just go screw itself. But in high school, I learned more because we went to a private school with
yes,
the packets, and I could
but
have combined all that into about one year's worth of education.
yeah,
Meaning, if I could have done that in a year, what were the other 3 years? What did I spend the other 3 years? Because
uh,
my last year of high school, I went to no classes. I did nothing. And
yep,
I still graduated with honors. Why? Because for 1 hour I went to chemistry and 1 hour I went to physics.
yeah.
So
I
of
was in
my
the same
year
boat, so
in high
that's
school, I went to school for 2 hours a day. That was my entire senior year.
yeah, because that was
2
the only class that you could not do more than.
I
I mean,
couldn't do on
you
my
yeah,
Everything else was done through packets. It was done through the manuals. I had online Spanish classes. I went through
yeah.
like 3 years of that, some of which I've retained, and I do
But
find that valuable. But what are we gearing our kids up towards?
well, it's because again we're talking about public schools. We went to a private school for middle school through high school,
Correct. If I
and
stayed in public school, I would have been an imbecile.
yeah,
The only reason I feel I actually retained anything in high school is because we did went to the private school. So I'm
yes,
not bashing the private school. I'm just saying all of my private school career could have been condensed into 1 year.
yeah, could have, probably should have. In retrospect, I definitely should have done more than the minimum.
Was condensed into 1 year. I mean, sometimes I go through 2 or 3 packs in like a week, and well, there's 3 months worth of work.
Yeah,
But the reason they had those criteria and said, hey, this should equate is because that's what's out in standard public schools.
mm-hmm.
This is the information you would have retained in English class in general public schools within a month, but I could finish that packet in 2 days and retain the information. And if you ask me a week later, I'd still know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
My question is, what are we gearing our kids toward? Do we need to know what a dangling participle is? Is that a principle that builds what you are in society?
Well,
I
like what I was
understand
saying before,
language and the construction of sentences, proper ways to speak things is a good thing.
yeah. Like
However,
we were taught that. If you, I went to college with people who were graduates of public schools that couldn't form proper sentences. They were obviously not taught that sort of thing, but they were taught to memorize.
The two main careers that I picked in my life, one was an electrician, a trade job.
Yeah.
None of that came through school at all.
No,
None. Not a bit. That was a family trade job that was picked up from our father, and he passed it on to me, our younger brother. I don't know if you did any of the electrical work.
No, they wouldn't let me near it.
So
I did. I wired some like outlets and wall switches and stuff like that. That's all they would let me near.
Yeah, that was my early introduction, and that type of job lasted me into my early 20s.
Yeah.
The other job that I'm interested in, I'm in the IT field.
Mm-hmm.
I started off building computers, and I went to college and learned about, different processors and networking and blah, blah, blah. And I finally got my foot in a job, another IT prospect. You know where I got my start with that IT mindset?
Yeah, you went to like a it wasn't DeVry, it was Rankin, right?
Nope. It was when New Life was first getting set up. We got donated a handful of computers,
Oh,
and
okay.
Braswell, and there was another guy there that were having to install Windows 93 or 95 and plug in the hard drives and set up the motherboards and do all this. And I was hanging around bored, so I was like, "Can I help you? Can I build some of these for you guys?" And so they let me. That's what actually started me in the IT industry. Had nothing to do with school. This was in the middle of summer. I was one of the guys that helped build the computers that New Life had.
Gotcha.
And it was because I stuck around. I was like, yeah, right now I'm rollerblading in the parking lot over there, but what are you guys doing? This seemed really cool. So I got interested in it. They allowed me to sit and watch, and then for a handful of systems, they allowed me to kind of participate.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, that's when I conned Nate into, hey, let's combine our money and let's actually build a PC, a computer of our own. When we found a store, we bought our parts, and then we built. That's why I built my own system. It was half my money, half Nate's. He got to play some games on it, but it mostly sat in my room.
Yeah.
It,
I was about to say, oh, he put his money into that? I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it mostly sat in your room and you played games and you did stuff on it.
Well, that's what got me on the internet. That's what got me introduced to Napster. It's got what me introduced to IT, period. None of that was taught in middle school or high school ever.
Yeah.
The primary careers I've had in my entire life, zero experience through high school.
Okay.
At all. Ever.
Okay.
My career currently was not started through high school. At all. In fact, there was no started through high school.
But other people did, and so your experience is different because you didn't go to public school. But also you're in a career field that encourages critical thinking.
I went to public school in 9th grade. There were no computer classes. There was only type classes.
No,
Type faster. I took that course. I was in that course.
Yeah, so there's typing classes. But what I'm saying is the people who graduate from public schools, they are taught to memorize. They are taught to follow instructions. They are not taught critical thinking skills. And maybe if they're lucky in college, they will take courses that actually challenge them to develop those critical thinking skills. But most people that go to college never get that part. And all they get is, here's a set of instructions, follow these, memorize these. That prepares them for factory labor, where, hey, it's just a simple set of instructions, you are a cog in the machine, do this every day, show up to work on time, do this, memorize that.
You're 100% correct.
Yeah.
That I have been through.
Yeah.
And
so that is the majority of schools in the U.S. and in most of the developed world. It's very rare where you see a school that is established around critical thinking, where people are invested in problem solving, where it teaches people to be their own boss, go out in their own profession, and run their own businesses or build their own anything.
But why? I mean, okay, just anecdotal experience, and all I can offer is anecdotal because I mean, it is my life. But I became the help desk trainer for the company I work for for a number of years. After just a few weeks, I completely redirected all of my training, and I built it towards that line of thinking, building troubleshooting skills. I can give you answers all day long. That does not make you a good troubleshooter, doesn't make you a good person on the IT help desk, doesn't make you good at answering phones, doesn't make you good at any of that. In fact, it makes me better at that. Why don't I just do your job? Instead, I retrained all my curriculum to point them towards help resources and never gave answers. This has been my entire training curriculum was never give answers. So if I popped up an error on your screen and, oh, now you've got this memory error, or no, now you've got this networking error, what do? Go look up what that error is.
Mm-hmm.
That's the basis of troubleshooting. That understanding that you can investigate. As soon as that little gap opens up that you can investigate, the rest of the world opens up like crazy. I mean, I cannot imagine how hard it was to be in IT before Google. I was lost.
Yep.
Because that's like 90% of my career is Googling what I don't know. But for some people, you have to teach them Google what you don't know. It's not a natural response.
Yeah, that's...
It doesn't mean anything taught in high school or middle school is ask questions and learn how to proceed with finding answers to your questions. Instead, you're just taught, here's your robot response. Here's what fills out the testing material that we'll give you when you get out of high school. But it doesn't do you any good anywhere.
Well, it sort of does.
A banker and a freeloader.
Well, it sort of does because the skill set they're developing is a skill set to memorize and follow instructions. This is how things are done. Rinse, repeat.
And that's fine. And I think that's great all the way through about 6th grade. After that, let's do some free thinking.
Yeah, I think free thinking should start sooner, but yeah, as long as it's like, okay, there are certain things that you just have to memorize. There's just certain things you just have to learn. But eventually you need to start learning to think on your own. Learning to solve your own problems, because that's what's going to be expected for higher positions inside companies. And usually, by the time somebody gets to the point where they're offered a manager position, they haven't developed that skill set at all. All they've been able to do is like, hey, somebody tell me what to do because I don't know how to proceed. I need somebody to tell me where to go from here. And they never like, well, if I was in charge, what would I do? That's I mean, I guess aside from these communist kids who think they know everything, they think they know how to run Amazon, they think they know how to run Apple, and they still live in their mother's basement. So aside from those kids who think they know, the people who actually get placed in those positions is like, okay, now you're in charge. What do you do? They're kind of like, well, tell me what to do. I'm like, but that's not how this works. Once you get to those higher tiers, it becomes you have to think for yourself.
Courses in middle school, right?
What?
Strategy courses. Let's have mock battles. And you're the military, you're the general. How do you win this battle? And next week, let's trade it up and have another student and another student. Let's get people into the idea of thinking, if I'm going to win in this situation, I need to think outside the box.
I mean, yeah, usually things like that come from extracurriculars. People who develop those skills are people who are taking like the chess club and things like that, where they're challenged to think.
The summer thing with the PC building, because it was there. It interested me. That started my entire IT career.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with middle school or high school at all. None of that was
taught. So people who haven't taken extracurriculars, who haven't done anything like outside clubs or anything along those lines, there's a lot of rinse and repeat. Hey, if somebody else has already done this, all you have to do is repeat what they've done. There's not much challenge of, okay, here's something, what can you do with this? There's very little challenge of that in the actual school system itself. And we've kind of gone on a long tangent here, and it's almost 10 o'clock. I do want to kind of wrap this up. But it sounds like about half of these things that he was advocating for have been implemented in the U.S., and that is scary to think about.
Yeah, and it hasn't actually improved anything. In fact,
those are the things making things worse, yeah.
We were well off before any of that got implemented.
Yeah, so some of these things occurred naturally without a government mandate, but some of these things were written into law, and we can see the devastating nature that they've had throughout time.
Yeah.
So that gets us through at least section 2 of this, and so next time we talk about the manifesto, with the exception of that part where you were looking at where it's might have said specific areas of land, unless that's in part 3, we'll...
I think section 4 is all of like references to other materials.
Section 4 is like a page, and that's just him giving his...
I just breezed through section 4. So it might be section 3 that I read.
Section 3 is shorter than section 2. Section 2 is the longest of the 4. Section 4 is like half a page, and it's just kind of...
Section 3 are the statements of, now that we have this ideology, how do we implement it?
Yeah, I think so.
That would make sense. Then that's probably where I read it.
Okay.
Because I don't remember much from section 4. Then there's a lot of references to other people's writings. But I do remember something where I'm just like, the goal is to separate everybody. I mean, it is literally you become a cog in the machine and then go place that cog where it belongs.
Yeah.
It is. How does anybody read that and think, man, this is amazing? It's just, it strips humanity from you of your entirety. You are not human.
And
you are a part of the machine. That's it.
And that's the fundamental thing ignored by the philosophy is he's treating people as if they are interchangeable machines, and people are not. And if people were interchangeable machines, this system would work. That's why people keep saying, "Oh, well, it sounds good on paper," because they're ignoring that. Like, wait a minute, humans don't always do what they're told. People rebel. People try to enact their individuality. The other thing is sometimes they miss quotas. That's something that his system can't account for. That because there's no incentive to go over quotas. When a quota is missed, that means, hey, you're just out. People starve. People lose whatever.
And ultimately, there are people who are born with self-drive. They have to progress beyond where they are. They can't help it.
And if they are born into a system like what he is proposing,
then they're simply going to be considered as adversaries or a cancerous cell.
Or it's just going to be beaten out of them. That's the message of 1984 is, yes, there was that person who's trying to think for himself, he's being that radical, and rather than being able to think for himself and rather than being able to achieve anything, he's instead, I think they give him a lobotomy, and he's forced to... give him a lobotomy, and then he just becomes a cog in the machine, like what they wanted him to be in the first place. That's... It's either that, or they're going to rebel. Either they lose all incentive and they lose all drive to be anything because it's beaten out of them or forced out of them, or they rebel until the system collapses.
And if any of you listening to this have ever watched The Matrix or any of the other subsequent series, that actually is the exact same topic.
Yeah.
That is what The Matrix was built upon.
Yeah. People will reject it.
Of you're pre-programmed in, or are you able to come out of it and make something better of it?
Yeah.
Because you have those abilities simply because of who you are.
Yep. And you will reject it because you're like, no, I'm out of here. This is not... I can do better.
So, it's not our ideology. It's not new. Just something we're discussing.
All right. And I think I will end the stream because I do have to pee. Thanks to anybody who joined me. We did miss Monday this week because I was having internet issues. But usually we try to do these Mondays, and we will be talking about the Communist Manifesto again next Monday. Thank you for joining me.